A very good morning and a warm welcome to Newsroom. It's 9 o'clock. I'm Elvis President.
I'm Kendall Makamat.
Jumbo Africa. Now today our focus is on something very disturbing. It's about the recent cannibalism cases that we found, especially in KwaZulu-Natal.
Absolutely. Yeah, it created an uproar of note. People eating people. That's what cannibalism is, and that's exactly what's been happening out Escort side in KZN.
Well, that's why we're asking you this question. On our poll today, what do you think should happen to people found guilty of cannibalism? Hashtag cannibalism, and there you have the numbers, Kendall.
Yeah, 38% of our respondents say psychological treatment is what's required, whereas an overwhelming majority, 62%, say absolutely, definitely give them a maximum prison sentence if found guilty.
But you're also tweeting us on this matter. This one from Grant Stanley says, they know what they're doing is wrong. It's murder. Punishment should be the same or not. Why psycho treatment for the most evil of crimes?
Gutalo Runtanga says there must be sentenced to life in prison.
Well, you can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also focusing on another issue in our question of the day, on an urgent parents' meeting, Kendall, that was called at a Pretoria West High School. And these children want their pants to be skinny.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, isn't it? Because it seems as if students might be taking the matters in their own hands and taking serious rights and liberties and taking them not so seriously.
To a different level.
Protesting skinny pants, really?
Skinny pants, of course, you remember for the older generation, the old stovepipe. So that's a skinny pants. And that's why they want that to be incorporated in the school. Now, we're asking you the question, what is your assessment of the Pretoria West hashtag skinny pants protests? Should they actually protest for this kind of thing? Well, Jennifer Rundle says, should not even be up for discussion. Schools offer education and not fashion. Well, strong statement there.
Could not agree with you more. Jacob Skosana says, the protest is a disgrace. They should be focusing on studying and passing their grades. People are now misusing the right to protest. Yes, Mr. Skosana, you're right.
They should actually take a look at the students that's protesting and look at their grades and their marks to assess them and make sure that those ones that are calling for those skinny pants, that they actually study. But right now, of course, we're also asking an important question in sport.
The US Open started last night, and some very interesting results already out, and we want to find out from you who will go all the way and win it this year. Both men and women in those draws. Venus Williams won her match. Sharapova has won her match. Kevin Anderson has gone through as well. Who do you think will go through and win it this year?
Well, there you have it. Keep them coming. We'll read those comments. In fact, there's a couple of comments in already. People are tweeting us. Let's take a look at what you're telling us. The Michael Big M says, I'm putting my last 1 million rand on Maria Sharapova. She's fresh from a 15-month doping suspension, and I'm sure she will want to silence a few people and critics.
Yes. Nice one. Nice. Nothing more like a revenge to get one going, isn't it? Siafana says, Williams, I think Venus Williams will win it. Siafana, I'm with you. 20 years on, Venus Williams will win the US Open. At least I hope so.
Well, there you have it. These are some of your comments. Please keep coming. Read them as we continue. But right now, let's take a look at your news headlines. The case against one of the Fees Must Fall movement leader, Mthebo Dlamini, will be heard in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court today. The Moirani Commission investigating political killings in KwaZulu-Natal continues today. And the National Union of Mine Workers has called on Harmony Gold Mine to intensify efforts to rescue the last two remaining trapped miners at Kusasaletu Mine in Carltonville and Gauteng's West Rand. Those are your headlines. Before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening in the sport, and he'll also take us through the news.
Elvis, thank you very much. Good morning to you. I have got the big stories of the day, but before we do that, yes, let's talk a little bit about the sports. Venus Williams marked the 20th anniversary of her racially charged debut at the US Open in 1997 with the victory of a Slovakian, Victoria Kuzmova.
We don't see any real point in bringing them 14 hours down to South Africa to do one light session and then turn them around and send them another 14 hours back to Cape Verde.
Stuart Baxter lets common sense prevail as he chooses to have Bafana's European contingent fly directly to Cape Verde rather than do a Johannesburg stopover.
It's been a hectic week for us, preparing, getting all the off and on-field systems going.
And the Kings plan to use their Pro 14 lifeline in the best way possible as they reveal their squad to play the Welsh team, Scarlets, this weekend. Good morning, you're watching Newsroom and I'm Kendall Mahamat. Here are our top stories for the day. The case against one of the Fees Must Fall movement leaders, Mcebo Dlamini, will be heard in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court today. Dlamini is facing multiple charges that include public violence, assault, theft and damage to property. He was arrested at his Wits University residence in October last year during the protests for free education. Dlamini was initially denied bail by the Johannesburg Magistrates Court, but this decision was overturned by the High Court. The case was postponed to today to give him time to instruct his new legal representation after his lawyer withdrew from the matter. And the Women's Legal Centre is continuing with asking the Western Cape High Court to order government to pass legislation that will protect women married under Muslim customary law. The WLC has argued before a full bench of judges that the majority of wives and children of this customary union are left destitute in cases of divorce. A group of women staged a picket outside the Cape Town High Court in support of women's rights in Muslim customary marriages. The WLC argued that women are discriminated against in areas like divorce, parental rights and inheritance, and that women should have equal rights as that of a civil union. Lawyers told the court that while customary Muslim marriages are lawful, consequences like dissolution of the union are not regulated. Arguments continue today. And staying in court, the Moerane Commission investigating political killings in KwaZulu-Natal continues today. In one of the most volatile areas of the province, Cleveland's hostel at Umlazi, south of Durban, 93 people have been killed since 2014.
Macpherson painted a grim picture of Richmond. He said the area was gripped by fear and intimidation. This, he said, also hampered service delivery. This year, 4 ANC councillors were killed, including 39-year-old ANC municipal manager Sibusiso Sitole. Sitole was gunned down by 2 men in broad daylight next to the licensing offices in the town. Macpherson believed it was Sitole's anti-corruption stance and crackdown on corruption which led to his murder.
The first reason I believe that this happens is because those that are doing the stealing want to eliminate those that are trying to expose them. Those that want to stop the stealing are people that want to return the party to what it was. And I speak in a larger context of where the party is on a national level. From those that have sought to use political power to enrich themselves.
He also questioned why high-level police investigations hadn't resulted in arrests.
They are either being paid to be involved or protect those that are doing the killing, or they are protecting very senior politicians within the ANC.
Sitole's widow, Silindile, told the commission she wanted to leave Richmond as her husband was blackmailed into giving employment to people. Sitole was about to take up a position as municipal manager at another municipality when he was killed. Renee Heine, SABC News, Durban.
The National Union of Mine Workers has called on Harmony Gold to intensify efforts to rescue the 2 remaining trapped miners at Kusasa Mine in Carltonville in Gauteng's West Rand. Bodies of 3 of the 5 miners who were trapped have been recovered, and mine rescue personnel are still searching for the remaining 2. Now, about 3,000 mine workers were working underground last Friday when a tremor caused part of the mine to collapse. All except the 5 managed to escape. AMCU says it's disturbing that mining disasters continue to occur in South Africa. The Labour Union is calling on government, mining companies and other unions to come to the table and discuss measures needed to ensure the safety of all mine workers. The rescue operation is still continuing and mine operations have been suspended until further notice. And the EFF says it won't be drawn into political infighting between the DA and the UDM regarding the ousted deputy mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape. The new deputy mayor will be announced at the next council meeting. The Democratic Alliance's Executive Mayor Athol Trollip outlined the reasons for the axing of UDM Deputy Mayor Mongameli Bobani. He accused Bobani of irregularities under his tenure as head of public health and allegedly for voting against the DA-led coalition on countless times. The DA says it does not want to end the coalition with the UDM, but says they will not work with an individual whose personal conduct is at odds with the coalition agreement. In the meantime, UDM leader Bantu Holomisa threatened to withdraw from the agreement unless Bobani is reinstated or Mayor Trollip is replaced. Holomisa says the party will go to court to challenge the removal of Bobani.
These documents are made up of correspondence and authentic pieces of evidence that have been substantiated about a number of issues over a long period of time, where Councillor Bobani has contravened almost every single provision of the co-governance agreement, from using blue lights in his vehicle to voting against council.
Our papers are ready. They will be focusing mainly on, one, that the procedure which was followed in boosting and putting out Bobani was flawed. Number two, the noise that Bobani has been made by DA leaders about the reports, every piece of paper they have against Bobani regarding corruption, they must table it in the council, it's debated, resolution is taken by the council, or if they have evidence, they must bring it in court. So this is the route we are following from now on.
The number of people killed in a shootout with police in Durban has risen to 6. 5 suspects, allegedly robbing a cash-in-transit vehicle, were shot dead by police. A bystander, shot in a crossfire, died yesterday. A police officer is also fighting for his life in hospital after being shot as well.
Umgeni Road, always teeming with shoppers, resembled a war zone. A gun battle ensued between police and suspects who tried to rob a cash van. The shootout lasted for about 15 minutes. The suspects were allegedly fleeing with an undisclosed amount of cash after robbing a cash-in-transit vehicle. It's believed a gang of men had just robbed this cash-in-transit vehicle. Police responded to an emergency call. 1 suspect was gunned down in a shootout with police. 5 other suspects fled the scene. The police pursued them to the nearby residential area of Palok. Here, 4 more suspects were shot and killed. A bystander was also shot dead. 3 civilians were injured. 1 suspect believed to be the driver of the getaway car fled the scene. Witnesses say they heard a gunfire and saw men fleeing with bags of money.
We were buying food when we heard gunshots. When we looked around, we saw this car and the people in it shooting at the police, and the police shot back. We ran for our lives and lay on the ground.
Police are investigating.
A number of firearms has been recovered from the suspects there, and also the box of cash. The box with cash was also recovered at the scene. At the moment, we are at the scene waiting for the local fingerprints record center to come and attend the scene.
The suspects are believed to be linked to other crimes in the country. 5 9mm pistols and a rifle were confiscated by police. Lungisi Kumalom, SABC News, Palok.
MPs and MPLs from across the continent will look at the impact of new industry and how it affects working women. This will be discussed at a 2-day conference hosted by Parliament starting today. 250 delegates are expected to attend.
Closing the gender gap is hard enough. Now, with the world in the midst of the 4th industrial revolution, women may be affected by the impact of new technologies. Parliament says it needs to keep an eye on this and be prepared for any fallout.
One of the activities that the Women Caucus does is to look at how our legislation as lawmakers are actually sensitive to improving the lives of women. Secondly, looking at public resources, how these, in terms of their allocation and spend, are used to improve the lives of women.
This is just one of the issues being discussed. Also on the agenda, where the current legislation positively impacts on the lives of women across the continent. This conference comes after the UN's 61st Commission on the State of Women held in March. It is expected to adopt a declaration which would inform discussion at the 62nd session next year, providing an African perspective. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
And a ban on plastic carrier bags in Kenya took effect yesterday. Anyone found manufacturing, selling or carrying a plastic bag will pay a fine of up to $38,000 or face a jail term of not less than a year.
At the Ngara market in Nairobi, fruits and vegetable vendors go about business as usual. Every purchase is packed in plastic bags provided free of charge by the vendors. One can also buy a single-use bag for anything between 5 and 20 shillings.
Sometimes you may be buying some little goods and then you prefer to carry paper bags than any other thing.
Only primary packaging will be allowed.
It is expected that the polythene carrier bags will be withdrawn from all retail outlets.
Not an easy transition, many here in Ngara market admit.
I'm not so happy because my customers, I don't know how to be putting for them with anything, I don't know. But maybe the government will give us another solution.
The United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, estimates that supermarkets in Kenya hand out 100 million bags every year. Across the East African nation, it is clear that plastic bags pose a challenge for the country's weak waste disposal systems. They have clogged landfills, drainages and walkways. UNEP has also warned that every year 8 million tons of plastic end up in the oceans, and that if no action is taken by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the sea. A determined Kenyan government has set up an exhibition where business people can display alternatives to plastic. It will be a delicate balance for the Kenyan government. On the one hand is the issue of protecting the environment. On the other hand is the issue of jobs. Thousands of jobs are at risk.
Come Monday, flat 60,000 jobs will be lost.
Ask me about the thousands of jobs that are going to be created, more than the jobs lost. I am here to create and diversify employment for Kenyans.
In Africa, Rwanda and Morocco have already implemented their ban on the use of plastics.
We are coordinating with the other countries through the East African community, and we're at a very advanced stage.
This is Kenya's fourth attempt to ban plastic bags. Sarah Kemani, SABC News in Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, in news from further afield, Japan and the United States have requested an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council after North Korea fired a missile that flew over Japanese territory before crashing into the sea. Both countries, as well as South Korea, Australia and Britain, sharply condemned Pyongyang's action. Tokyo said the latest missile overflew the country's northernmost island of Hokkaido. Japanese Prime Minister has urged his government to take steps to ensure the safety of all citizens. The government of Japan says the test was a clear violation of UN resolutions, and the government had protested against the move in the strongest terms. Now, of course, we redirect your attention to one of our themes and our focus for today, which is about the recent cannibalism cases in South Africa. On today's poll, we'd like to find out from you, what do you think should happen to people found guilty of cannibalism? Should they A, be sent for psychological treatment, or B, face a maximum prison sentence? So far, we've received quite a number of votes. We've received 32, and 62% reckon that, you know what, a maximum prison sentence is what's required, whereas 38 say psychological treatment is where it should be. You are, of course, tweeting us on the matter, and we'd love to share what's being said and thought with the rest of our viewers. First up, Mahafa says, maximum prison sentence will do. I think it will also deter ritual killings. Jamila van Escape comes in with cannibalism is inhumane. And so these people who do it should receive psychological help. Why are they cannibals? What's the reason for this? Of course, absolutely, everybody's quite keen to find out what is the reason for people stooping to that level or doing it. We go over to Elvis now to carry on this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Kendall. That is, of course, our topic today, and that's the focus. Later on, we'll speak to a dietitian to find out whether or not it's nutritious for you to eat human flesh. But 5 suspects allegedly responsible for cannibalism in Escort have abandoned their bail application following a brief appearance at the magistrate's court yesterday. The 5 men were charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder. 2 weeks ago, one of the suspects handed himself over to the police, claiming to be tired of eating human flesh.
5 men in the dock. One of them broke down in tears. The so-called cannibal syndicate was expected to apply for bail. Instead, they decided to abandon their applications. Outside court, hundreds protested, carrying placards demanding that the suspects be denied bail. 2 weeks ago, one of the suspects handed himself over to the police, claiming to be tired of eating human flesh.
As women in Wembezi, we are tired of these people. We want to deal with them ourselves because the police are just taking way too long.
We don't know what their intentions were. Perhaps they were sent by traditional healers. We don't know.
2 of the 5 suspects are reportedly traditional healers, but their colleagues in the profession say the 2 are plain criminals and that they should not be associated with their practice.
We don't support what has happened. Murderers kill people in our name. Real healers don't kill. They don't use human organs for healing. They use traditional medicine.
Some of the female body parts recovered were found hidden under rocks. The Hlatloayo family is adamant the remains belong to their 25-year-old daughter who went missing a month ago. The family claims clothes and accessories found at the scene belong to her. Police are now conducting DNA tests.
Her sister went to identify the clothes, and when she got there, the police showed her the clothes as they were not allowed to see the remains. She saw that the clothes belonged to her sister, and that gave us assurance that it definitely was her because she left wearing the same clothes.
The case has been postponed to the 28th of next month for further investigations. Sibonga Gonkambata, SABC News, Escort.
Now later on, we'll speak to an analyst on this story just after the break around people eating human flesh. But let's now take a look at social trends and what's happening there. We start with a rather serious international story that is causing some worldly tensions. North Korea has fired a missile over Japan's airspace. Japan sent out an alert message to its citizens telling them to take over. And the United Nations Security Council has called this an unprecedented threat and will be convening for an urgent meeting. US President Donald Trump and the Japanese President Shinzo Abe have vowed to increase pressure on North Korea. Hashtag Korean missile. There you can see it flying over Japan. And the question, of course, have scholars lost their focus on their schooling and their right to protest? Boys at the Pretoria West High School have boycotted class, demanding to wear skinny pants. Those are the type of pants they want to wear. And of course, that's why we're asking you that question, of course, in our question of the day. What do you think should happen about these school children demanding to wear skinny pants? Are they there for the fashion or for their education? Then in some sports news, the Grand Tennis Championships is underway. There is lots of talk about the wildcard Maria Sharapova, who beat Simona Halep on her Grand Slam return, and Venus Williams marks her 20th anniversary of playing in the esteemed tournament. Hashtag US Open. Then Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton wins his 200th F1 race, a grand title to add to his legacy. Hashtag Lewis Hamilton there. And in the U.S., cleanup operations are underway in Texas after Hurricane Harvey brought flooding across most of the state. Comedians and actors Kevin Hart and The Rock have donated $25,000 each to assist those who lost everything. Now, these are some of the pictures that you see coming in from the U.S. Hashtag Hurricane Harvey. Our picture of the day comes from AJ, and it's captioned, Kenya has banned plastic bags, and anyone selling, manufacturing or carrying them could face a fine or a prison sentence. Look at that plastics rather, over there in Kenya. They want to do away with it and clean up the environment. Our comment of the day comes from Yomasa Kant, And so the hair issue is over now. It's hashtag skinny pants. Yes, from one to the other. But skinny pants for me is an issue, isn't it? Well, let's take a look at what's happening in our courts today. We start off in KwaZulu-Natal, where a 30-year-old man is due to appear in the magistrate's court in connection with the murder of a young woman with albinism. Last month, the Richards Bay Organized Crime Unit arrested the man believed to have been in a relationship with a 19-year-old victim, Asanda Mbuyazi. Now he's facing rape and murder charges. In the Western Cape, a 57-year-old man is expected to appear in the Claver Magistrates Court on the West Coast following a fatal shooting over the weekend. One person was killed and another wounded. The incident led to widespread violence and torching of at least 5 houses in Claver. Those are some of the stories we'll keep you posted here on the newsroom, but let's throw forward and look at tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be looking at the state of our SOEs, that is state-owned enterprises. SAA, Telkom, SABC, here at home, as well as Eskom. You don't want to miss that. We'll take a short break. After the break, we speak to a professor about the issue of cannibalism. Stay tuned.
I'm Marcelo Torres, and this is SBT, one of the leading TV networks in Brazil.
I am host of the political debate program Crosstalk. I'm very pleased to be with you at this very important event.
We are India's largest 24-hour news network, and I look forward to the opportunity of talking about BRICS.
My name is Criselda Lewis from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. See you in Beijing.
I look forward to welcoming my counterparts from the other BRICS countries in a first-ever 5-way televised debate.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News Live at 1000 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Multiple League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Hello and a warm welcome to PM News, and we're broadcasting live from Johannesburg.
4 decades later, the family is still seeking closure.
We need the truth, and the truth must be told.
Children often go undiagnosed because they are hidden away. About 1 million people in South Africa live with autism.
Creative recycling at play.
Mosaic has been around forever. I just had to find a new, fresh way to put and a new spin to put on it. So I decided why not recycled cans.
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours.
Africa is constantly getting new technologies, and with that comes new terms.
Massive, open, online university. And primarily what they are doing is they're established in the community, so they're well established within the Soweto community.
Internet of Things also covers small sensors, so you can do like home security, motion detectors, IP cameras.
Our network simplifies these terms for you. We also have new gadgets and social media.
When it falls on the grounds and then the battery, everything falls off, people just put it all together and then your phone is back in shape.
The Valega app, we initially started off by doing this manually.
The internet is actually my favorite fashion invention of all time.
That's Network with Ms. Pumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
The 5 suspects accused of being in possession of body parts at Escort in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands have abandoned their bail application. They appeared briefly in the local magistrate's court yesterday, facing 2 charges, including murder and conspiracy to commit murder and possibly cannibalism. The suspects were arrested last week after one of them went to a local police station and voluntarily admitted to cannibalism. We're now joined by Professor Gerard Labuschagne. He's a clinical psychologist with the Health Professions Council of South Africa, as well as the British Psychological Society, ex-brigadier with the SAPS. A very good morning to you, Professor, and welcome.
Morning, thank you.
First, talk to us about eating human flesh. Can somebody eat human flesh?
You can. I think people are quite surprised when they hear that, technically speaking, eating human flesh is not a crime. There are various other factors around it that will be probably criminal acts, and I always like to compare it to drugs. You're not charged with taking drugs, you're charged with possession of drugs, possession of illegal substances or selling them or trading them, etc. So it's the same thing with cannibalism. We're not going to charge you, though there's no criminal crime for cannibalism, but being in possession of human body parts is a crime in terms of either the Human Tissue Act or the National Health Act, unless you are a designated medical facility or some organization allowed in terms of the act to be in possession of. So the possession of the human body parts on its own is a crime. If they can prove that you had murdered someone to get the body parts, of course you'll additionally be charged with murder. If you worked at a mortuary and you took the body parts from the body, you'd be charged with desecration of a corpse. So there are various charges around it, but if you are doing that, you'll invariably be charged with something, depending on the extent at which you were involved with that actual body.
So if you're being accused of being a cannibal, you cannot be arrested? Is that
just
what you're
by that itself, no.
Now, why do people eat human flesh? Is there a stigma around it, or what is it?
Yeah. Look, I think most cultures would have a sort of a social norm against it. But if you look at the basic reasons across the spectrum, yes, there were certain cultures throughout the world, not just Africa, Papua New Guinea, South America, and throughout the world, and historically, where it was part of certain cultures for certain rituals and practices. Then you have, on the extreme side of it, the scenarios where people are in starvation situations, extreme scenarios, say North Korea, where there's massive famines, or people trapped on a desert island and there's no food, that they might then turn to cannibalism. But what we more likely see in modern society is that it's linked to mental illness usually. And then a sort of a fourth option, which I've come across it and which has been documented overseas also, is in certain serial murder cases where in some of the victims there was cannibalism. Jeffrey Dahmer is perhaps the most well-known one. But we've had cases in South Africa where serial murderers who have also engaged in cannibalism.
Is there a link between psychological behavior of a person and eating human flesh?
Well, look, I mean, again, for people who are forced into it, for example, in the famine scenario, it has a great psychological impact. It's a massive barrier to overcome to get to the point where you'll agree to eat your own species. So I think that has a great psychological impact on anybody who has to do it. And of course, as I said, on the other side, if there's a mental health issue that can cause someone in very rare circumstances to engage in cannibalism.
I was also told that when somebody eats someone's brain, that there might be some side effects. What are those?
So we're not designed to eat our own species. In fact, very few species is it a positive thing to eat one of your kind. So definitely, there's been if you eat human brains, you run the risk of getting a disease called kuru. So some Polynesian tribes who were engaging in cannibalism as certain ritual practices would develop this neurological disease. And as soon as that was medically proven, it kind of cannibalism in the late 50s and 60s, and those remaining tribes kind of died out very quickly because it was proven that this was causing the neurological impact. And even if you look at something like mad cow disease, the reason why that was developed is because cows were being fed other parts of cows. So it's never a long-term strategy that's very effective to eat your own species.
Let's take a look at the cases in KZN where 5 people are accused of being in possession of those body parts. One of them went to the police station and actually admitted that they are tired now of eating human flesh. In this particular case, what do you think could be the motivation behind that?
Yeah. So as mentioned, we have very sketchy information about the actual facts, and that's why we have to be cautious about making any final conclusions, and the investigation will hopefully bring all of this to light. But it's the person walking in, or automatically, I mean, one of the things you might consider whenever you hear human body parts is muti murder. But from my experience, muti murder, in my own cases that I worked on in the police, didn't involve cannibalism. So that's unusual for a muti murder practice. Human body parts are used for various other things, like burying in front of a shop to sort of attract customers for the shopkeeper, etc., but not the eating of the human body parts. We also have rumors in this particular case that there was also the rape of the victim. And again, in our multi-murder cases, rape is usually one of our exclusion criteria for it to be a multi-murder case. So that's why I'm saying we really want to exclude mental illness for that first person who walked in and made these allegations, and then only down the line some perversion of sort of multi-murder practices.
In your line of work over the last 14 years that you've been in the police, what sort of cases have you identified that is linked to cannibalism?
So I would probably say in my experience it's 50-50 between your mental illness individual, a person who might be having a psychotic episode, hearing voices, seeing things that are not there, have very strange delusional thoughts, and part of that might include them believing that they need to eat human body parts. So it's 50-50 between that, and the other cases would be then sort of your serial murderer who, again, not even throughout the whole series, with one of the victims engages in cannibalism as more as like an experimentation to see. They're curious, they want to see what this tastes like, what would happen, etc., and they engage in it. So that's why I'm saying, you know, the cannibalism part, 50-50 mental illness issues or serial murder related in South Africa in my cases.
Would you think that mental illness is more prevalent in this particular case where people would eat other people?
Yeah, I definitely would want to check that as my first option to rule that out. And I think any prosecutor and definitely any defense counsel worth their salt would refer these or whichever individuals they decide to charge for a forensic mental health observation, the sort of 30-day observation as they refer to it, which would determine at the time of this incident, were they experiencing a mental illness and was that mental illness linked to what they did? So I think they will definitely want to exclude that before the trial proceeds.
Have you ever found people that would actually go into a graveyard and dig up corpses to eat human flesh?
Not to eat, but definitely in relation to multi-murder practices we've had from mortuaries, theft of body parts, digging up graves, and of course the unfortunate incidents where they actually kill someone for the body parts.
Professor, I thank you so much for your time and joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. That was Professor Gerard Lebeskagni, clinical psychologist with the Health Professional Council of South Africa, as well as the British Psychological Society, and ex-brigadier with the SAPS. What do you make of that?
I'm Marcelo Torres, and this is SBT, one of the leading TV networks in Brazil.
I am host of the political debate program Crosstalk. I'm very pleased to be with you at this very important event.
We are India's largest 24-hour news network, and I look forward to the opportunity of talking about BRICS.
My name is Criselda Lewis from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. See you in Beijing.
I look forward to welcoming my counterparts from the other BRICS countries in a first ever 5-way televised debate.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people. And your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
We're talking news, business and sporting updates both continentally and abroad. South Africa is in its first economic recession since 2009.
Currency has appreciated quite a lot, especially for this year. And it has benefited from a number of things, not so much to do with what was happening here at home.
The Islamic State-linked news agency AMAC claims the latest attack was launched because of Australia's backing in the US fight against the group.
Constad is one of the dozens of women who have accused Cosby of sexual assault, but hers is the only case recent enough to be subjected to criminal prosecution.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
traditional healers in KwaZulu-Natal are calling on government to ensure that people found with human body parts spend their entire lives in jail. This after 2 people and a traditional healer were found with human tissue at Escort in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. Now, joining us from the House of Traditional Healers is the chairperson of the Traditional Healers Association or organization, the Tsakani branch, Janet Kaba. Ms. Kaba, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, sir.
First and foremost, what do you make of the latest incident of cannibalism in KwaZulu-Natal and where a traditional healer was found with human tissue?
Okay, I wouldn't say it was a traditional healer. It could be someone else pretending to be a traditional healer. Because as a traditional healer, you've been taught that person's life and the person's health comes first. So it could be anybody else or someone else from another planet that is doing that, but surely it is not a traditional healer.
So you are suggesting that this.
agree.
So you're suggesting that this is a charlatan posing as a traditional healer.
Yes.
Okay. But what do you make of the cases of people being found with human flesh, and even somebody reporting to the police saying that he's tired of eating human flesh? As a traditional healer, an organization, what do you make of that?
I think on that note, that person, psychologically, that person is not well. That person needs to go to a psychiatric hospital and he needs to be checked thoroughly because in real life, there is no way that a human being can eat another human being's life. It is impossible.
What would you like to see done with the perpetrators? Because your branch in KwaZulu-Natal is called on people that is found with either human flesh or eating human flesh to be sent to jail for life.
Even if they've been sent to jail, I would say they still need attention. You throw away a person into jail, but you still need to help that person to come back to Mother Earth so that that person can do the right thing after he has seen the wrongs that he has done.
As traditional healers, as an organization, do you ever use human body parts to heal or to use it for healing purposes?
No, we don't.
We've heard earlier from a professor that indicated that sometimes body parts are being utilized to either bring luck or whatever, perhaps a hand being put in front of a shop to bring people and attract people to the shop. Is this the case or is it just a myth?
I wouldn't answer for what professor has said because surely we're talking now traditional healers and we're talking people that are healing the nation. I think it will be very, very wrong for us as traditional healers to say we will kill people and plant them into our shops for business.
So not at all, at any case or anywhere would any body part of a human being used for traditional healing?
No, not that I know of.
Now, as an organization that represents traditional healers, do you educate your healers in relation to what can be done and what should be done, and is there a protocol that they should follow?
Yes, we do have a protocol. I love that question because every patient that comes in, or even the ones that are getting initiated, they've been trained. We are working hand in hand with health departments, our local clinics. So health promoters will always be there and to check if everything is going well or everything has been done the right way. So I'm glad you asked that question because it will give now the community at large to know that traditional healers will not and don't kill people and eat their human flesh. And we don't make muti out of people.
Are you going to set up your own investigation into this matter? Because we believe it's a whole area that's basically involved in eating this the human flesh.
We are, as THO members, as traditional healers in South Africa, we are saying like now, we are promoting health. And we are also celebrating this month, in August month, it's Women's Month. And we are also celebrating our African medical things. It's like African medicine month for us this year. And for us this month, we are saying to people, look after your forest, look after your garden, because this is where the herbs that the healing people comes from, not the body parts of the people.
That's wonderful. Now, in relation to the people that has now confessed that they've eaten human flesh, are you able as traditional healers to heal them?
As traditional healers, we can also give them counseling, but they need to go into hospitals. They need to be diagnosed with the right medication so that they can, with us and the doctors, we can work hand in hand to help them heal from, it's a disease. What they're having, it's a disease. It's not something that you say a human can surely eat another human's flesh, but they need help.
Is there traditional medication available for people like this?
There's more of a counseling to them, like you take them for 3 months counseling. Every time you check something, there must be something wrong with the person. Even if you sentence that person for 10 years or for life, you're helping him by setting him away from other people because he's a danger to people, but we don't know what causes that, and we don't know what is the problem.
Ms. Kaba, in closing, what is your message to South Africans this morning from the traditional healer's perspective?
I would say to South Africans, please, a person's life, it's very, very important. That is why we have this strategy, or it is a struggle of saying Batupili. The Batupili principles, it means everyone has a right to live. So everyone has the right to life. So as women this month, in August month, we are saying ATM, it means African Medicine Month. Please respect traditional healers. They are there for you.
Ms. Kaba, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much, sir.
That was Janet Kaba from the House of Traditional Healers, the chairperson of the Traditional Healers Association or organization, the Tsakani branch, joining us here in studio. Well, that is why we are asking you this question on our poll. What do you think should happen to people found guilty of cannibalism? There's the numbers in, 52 votes in. It's a very topical subject, and 37% of you are saying they need psychological treatment. 63%, the majority of you are saying that these people need maximum prison sentences and then they can be treated. So those are 52 votes in. Let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle. Slow Poison, Fia Konse, says these cannibals should be sent to Robben Island and live the rest of their lives as vegetarians. Yes, South Africans, I tell you. Kutso says, bring back the death penalty. Cannibalism is nothing but a pure evil practice. Nazim Grootboom says they must be locked up for the rest of their lives and not with other prisoners. Can you imagine being locked up with a cannibal? It must make for some interesting viewing if it is a television show. This one coming from Nozi says, I think they deserve both. That is psychological treatment as well as being in prison for life. Well, there you heard it. These are some of your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll read those comments as we continue. Right now, it's time to take a look at the front pages from the newspapers around the globe. And we start off in Florida. The Miami Herald reports that floodwaters reached the roof lines of single-story homes yesterday, and people could be heard pleading for help from inside as Hurricane Harvey poured rain on the Houston area for a fourth consecutive day after a chaotic weekend of rising water and rescues. Moving to New York, the New York Times says that India and China agreed yesterday to back away from their confrontation over a tiny slice of territory high in the Himalayas in the mountains there, easing the tensions between the world's two most populous countries. And finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised that Israel would remain in the West Bank forever, including in the Samarra region, and that the radical Islam would never create a base on its hilltops. So expect the war to continue in the Middle East, it seems like. That is what Benjamin Netanyahu is calling for. Now, that's your news for now. Up next, is your weather forecast with Azi.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Well, over South Africa, we are expecting isolated showers in KwaZulu-Natal going to some parts of Eastern Cape, mostly towards the northern parts and the interior of Eastern Cape. The whole of Lesotho, along the coastal regions of Western Cape, 30% chance of showers can be expected, but clear skies over most parts of the southern hemisphere for today. We're seeing few clouds just over the northern parts of Angola, and along the coastal regions of Madagascar, very isolated showers can be expected for today. Tomorrow, we are expecting 30% chance of showers from the coastal regions of Eastern Cape to the interior of KwaZulu-Natal, with partly cloudy skies situated over the eastern parts. Otherwise, do expect clear skies over most parts of the southern hemisphere. And along the coastal regions of Madagascar, again, we're still expecting very isolated showers. Your temperatures will be at 26 in Pretoria, 27 for Polokwane. Sunny skies can be expected in Polokwane today. City of Durban at 29 with 30% chance of thunder showers to showers over the interior. Komani at 22 degrees and 20 over Port Elizabeth. Cape Town, 15 isolated showers still expected along these regions. DR at a maximum of 24 and clear skies expected. Uppington at 26, 16 for Springbok. This is due to a cold front making its way towards Western Cape, bringing in 30% chance of showers for today. Sunny skies over the interior of Botswana, but along the borders, we're seeing Francistown at 29, partly cloudy skies, and Gaborone sitting at 31. Windhoek at a maximum of 28 and 17 for Walvis Bay. Partly cloudy skies over the southern parts of Zimbabwe to the interior of Mozambique. Nampula at a maximum of 28, mostly sunny skies in Moroni. 30% chance of showers in Antananarivo. Port Louis at 26. Victoria will be sunny with temperatures at 28 over DRC. Isolated showers expected for today, but going to the northern parts, Juba, 60% chance of thunder showers can be expected. Kampala at 26, 25 for Nairobi, just partly cloudy skies. Mombasa at a maximum of 28. Luanda sitting at 30 and sunny skies expected. Libreville at 27. Moving towards the northern parts, we're still seeing clear skies over most parts of the Sahara Desert, but moving to the southern parts, Chad, Cameroon, and some parts of Ethiopia and Eritrea, up to 60% chance of thunder showers can be expected, and severe storms can be expected over the interior of Chad. So please do take note of that if you are in those regions. Otherwise, it will be isolated to partly cloudy tomorrow. Heavy rains can also be expected over the northern parts of Nigeria, going to Cameroon and Central Republic. Please do take note of that if you will be in those regions. Over Ethiopia, going to Eritrea, 60% chance of thunder showers forecast for tomorrow. That is all. Ndawuyendo.
It is 6 p.m. Central African Time, broadcasting live from Johannesburg. This is Primetime News.
South Africa said farewell to one of the Rivonia trialists, Uncle Kathy, a fearless stalwart.
With this man who was so engaged, so busy, so witty, so funny, so wise, and so incredibly principled.
Joseph Shabalala has been honored for his contribution to the South African music industry. A statue in his honor was unveiled during an annual gala dinner in Ladysmith.
The shot of the day, however, belonged to American Daniel Berger, who chipped in for an eagle on the par 4 fifth hole.
For all your news updates, stay on Primetime News every Saturday and Sunday from 6 p.m.
Hello and a warm welcome to PM News, and we're broadcasting live from Johannesburg.
4 decades later, the family is still seeking closure.
We need the truth, and the truth must be told.
Children often go undiagnosed because they are hidden away. About 1 million people in South Africa live with autism.
Creative recycling at play.
Music has been around forever. I just had to find a new, fresh way to put and a new spin to put on it. So I decided, why not recycled cans?
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours.
Cape Town, a South African coastal city not only home to millions of people of different cultures and traditions, but is also a melting pot for a variety of flora and fauna. Approximately 1,400 kilometers northeast of Cape Town lies Soweto, a township suburb of Johannesburg. Although in the same country, these two South African cities are almost complete opposites in terms of climate, vegetation and culture. Soweto is a summer rainfall district with average temperatures in summer between 26 and 30 degrees Celsius. It is generally dry, hot and made up of much of high-fell grassland vegetation. At the opposite end, Cape Town's majestic Table Mountain alone has over 2,000 types of fynbos species, more than that in the entire United Kingdom. The city and much of Cape Town owes its phenomenal biodiversity to its Mediterranean climatic conditions. The winters are usually wet and cool with average temperatures of 13 degrees Celsius. Summers are dry and warm with an average high of 25 degrees Celsius. Recently, however, scientific research has indicated that the average summer temperatures in Cape Town are on the rise as a result of carbon emissions. Based on climatic analysis performed by Climate Central, a generally cool city such as Cape Town could experience much warmer temperatures as experienced in Soweto. Using a concept known as shifting cities, Climate Central and indeed researchers from South African Weather Service agree that unless emissions are drastically reduced, Cape Town's average summer temperature could be similar to those of Maseru in Lesotho at 28.3 degrees Celsius. If they are, however, not reduced, they could be similar to those of Soweto at 29.56 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. With these increments, it is very likely that weather patterns will shift to more intense and frequent drought periods, interspaced with short periods of flash floods, gale force winds, and more wildfires. Cape Town is already experiencing some of these severe conditions at its current average temperatures. Some of the worst fears are that droughts are likely to be more severe, frequent, and last longer. This poses major risks to food securities and economic opportunities. Decreased rainfall along with rising temperatures could lead to severe water shortages in a region already prone to frequent droughts. Over the last 40 years have been about 9 winters with rainfall well below expected average. This will lead to even lower dam levels and shortages of fresh drinking water. Furthermore, increased temperatures in association with drier conditions and wind may increase the incidence of wildfires. Even at current temperature levels, raging fires destroy crops, cattle, and have claimed a staggering number of human lives. The cost of keeping livestock and domestic animals may increase as the need for more water and cooling may increase. One needs to bear in mind that most of these disasters are already taking place at current average temperatures levels of 26.6 degrees Celsius. Imagine how much worse these disasters could get at 29.8 degrees Celsius a little less than 100 years from now.
Welcome to the second hour here on the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Makamad.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Jumbo Africa. The topic is about humans eating humans. It's cannibalism, especially in KZN.
It's 2017. Who would have thought that in 2017 we would be talking about a case of cannibalism in South Africa?
Now, shortly we'll be speaking to a dietitian to find out what are the nutritional values of eating human meat. But we're asking you a question on the poll today. What do you think should happen to people found guilty of cannibalism?
And interesting enough, 67% of our respondents say maximum prison sentence for anybody found guilty of being a cannibal, while 33% say something else.
Well, the traditional healers also indicate that they need, these people being found guilty, they need psychological treatment. So, let's take a look at what you're telling us on the Twitter handle. This one from Bonzo says, how do we differentiate between traditional healing and witchcraft? Fake sangomas and real ones. How do we do that? Good question there.
Lubuya says death penalty is well deserved in this particular instance.
Well, Kendall, we're also focusing on parents meeting that's happening in Pretoria West, where students, they are demanding to wear skinny pants in school.
Yes,
grey skinny pants.
I'm a parent. Grey skinny pants.
Yes.
Not even the right color. But I'm a parent myself, and I think I would so disagree with this move by these young people that they be allowed to wear skinny pants. A uniform is a uniform. But having said that, we also want our viewers to share with us, no?
Well, some of our viewers indicated that, school is for education, not for fashion.
Exactly.
And another thing is you'll be discriminating against your peers because some of them won't be able to afford that skinny pants that you're wearing. That's why we're asking the question, what's your assessment of the Pretoria West skinny pants protest?
Sullivan says, simply madness.
This one from Madlot Kwakwe says, it's a shame for those kids who think that they can go on strike to be allowed at school with skinny pants. Why are there uniforms? It's, of course, to create uniformity within schools so you can discriminate against the other in a school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
we're definitely also doing a massive sporting question with the US Open starting. This is the last major tennis tournament of the year with a lot of the main draw cards pulling out to the US Open in the men's draw.
Well, Maria Sharapova is a wild card. Well,
yes, she's a wild card. She came in because she's a past champion. You know that she had a 15-month doping ban for taking meldonium illegally. And but we want to find out from you, who will go all the way this year at the US Open?
Let's take a look at what you're telling us. On the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, Michael the Big M says, I'm putting my last R1 million on Maria Sharapova. She's fresh from that 15-month doping suspension, as Kendall just indicated. And I'm sure that she will want to silence a few people and critics. She might be still flying high on that dope that she was taking.
No, I think she's playing clean and playing it safe these days. Siafana Zulu Esho says, I think Venus Williams will win it. Yes, pretty much is between those big guns, Garbina, Muguruza, Venus Williams, as well as Maria Sharapova.
But we got work to do. Let's take a look at your news headlines. The case against one of the Fees Must Fall movement leaders, Mcebo Dlamini, will be heard in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court today. The Morani Commission investigating, and I'm not too sure why Venus Williams is on my screen right now, but they will be investigating political killings in KwaZulu-Natal. And the National Union of Mine Workers has called on Harmony Gold Mine to intensify efforts to rescue the 2 remaining trapped miners at Kusasaletu Mine in Carltonville on Gauteng's West Rand. Those are all your headlines, but before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. Before I bring you the top stories for the day, let's bring you a little bit of what's going on in the world of sports. Venus Williams marks the 20th anniversary of her racially charged debut at the US Open in 1997 with the victory over Slovakian Viktoria Kuzmova.
We don't see any real point in bringing them 14 hours down to South Africa to do one light session and then turn them around and send them another 14 hours back to Cape Verde.
Stuart Baxter lets common sense prevail as he chooses to have Bafana's European contingent fly directly to Cape Verde rather than do a Johannesburg stopover.
It's been a hectic week for us, preparing, getting all the off and on-field systems going.
And the Kings plan to use their Pro 14 lifeline in the best way possible as they reveal their squad to play Welsh team Scarlets this weekend. Good morning, you're watching Newsroom. Now, the case against one of the Fees Must Fall movement leaders, Mcebo Dlamini, will be heard in Johannesburg Magistrates Court today. Dlamini is facing multiple charges that include public violence, assault, theft and damage to property. He was arrested at his Wits University residence in October last year during the protests for free education. Dlamini was initially denied bail by the Johannesburg Magistrates Court, but this decision was overturned by the High Court. The case was postponed to today to give him time to instruct his new legal representation after his lawyer withdrew from the matter. And the Women's Legal Centre is asking the Western Cape High Court to order government to pass legislation that will protect women married under Muslim customary law. The WLC has argued before a full bench of judges that the majority of wives and children of this customary union are left destitute in cases of divorce. A group of women staged a picket outside the Cape Town High Court in support of women's rights in Muslim customary marriages. The WLC argued that women are discriminated against in areas like divorce, parental rights and inheritance, and that women should have equal rights as that of a civil union. Lawyers told the court that while customary Muslim marriages are lawful, consequences like dissolution of the union are not regulated. Arguments continue today. And the Moerane Commission investigating political killings in KwaZulu-Natal continues today. In one of the most volatile areas of the province, Cleveland's hostel at Umlazi, south of Durban, 93 people have been killed since 2014.
McPherson painted a grim picture of Richmond. He said the area was gripped by fear and intimidation. This, he said, also hampered service delivery. This year, 4 ANC councillors were killed, including 39-year-old ANC municipal manager Sibusiso Sitole. Sitole was gunned down by 2 men in broad daylight next to the licensing offices in the town. McPherson believed it was Sitole's anti-corruption stance and crackdown on corruption which led to his murder.
The first reason I believe that this happens is because those that are doing the stealing want to eliminate those that are trying to expose them. Those that want to stop the stealing are people that want to return the party to what it was. And I speak in a larger context of where the party is on a national level. From those that have sought to use political power to enrich themselves.
He also questioned why high-level police investigations hadn't resulted in arrests.
They are either being paid to be involved or protect those that are doing the killing, or they are protecting very senior politicians within the ANC.
Sitole's widow, Silindile, told the commission she wanted to leave Richmond as her husband was blackmailed into giving employment to people. Sitole was about to take up a position as municipal manager at another municipality when he was killed. Renee Heine, SABC News, Durban.
Now, the National Union of Mine Workers has called on Harmony Gold Mine to intensify efforts to rescue the 2 remaining trapped miners at Kusasaletu Mine in Carltonville on Gauteng's West Rand. Bodies of 3 of the 5 miners who were trapped have been recovered, and mine rescue personnel are still searching for the remaining 2. About 3,000 mine workers were working underground last Friday when a tremor caused part of the mine to collapse. All except the 5 managed to escape. AMCU says it's disturbing that mining disasters continue to occur in South Africa. The Labour Union is calling on government, mining companies and other unions to come to the table and discuss measures needed to ensure the safety of all mine workers. The rescue operation is still continuing and mine operations have been suspended until further notice. And the EFF says it will not be drawn into political infighting between the DA and the UDM regarding the ousted Deputy Mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape. The new Deputy Mayor will be announced at the next council meeting. The Democratic Alliance's Executive Mayor, Athol Trollip, outlined the reasons for the axing of UDM Deputy Mayor Mongameli Bobane. He accused Bobane of irregularities under his tenure as head of public health and for allegedly voting against the DA-led coalition on countless occasions. The DA says it does not want to end the coalition with the UDM, but says they will not work with an individual whose personal conduct is at odds with the coalition agreement. UDM leader Bantu Holomisa has threatened to withdraw from the agreement unless Bobane is reinstated or Mayor Trollip is replaced. Holomisa says the party will go to court to challenge the removal of Bobane.
These documents are made up of correspondence and authentic pieces of evidence that have been substantiated about a number of issues over a long period of time, where Councillor Bobane has contravened almost every single provision of the co-governance agreement, from using blue lights in his vehicle to voting against council.
Our papers are ready. They will be focusing mainly on, one, that the procedure which was followed in boosting and putting out Bobane was flawed. Number two, the noise that Bobane has been made by DA leaders about the reports, every piece of paper they have against Bobane regarding corruption, they must table it in the council, it's debated, resolution is taken by the council, or if they have evidence, they must bring it in court. So this is the route we are following from now on.
And the number of people killed in a bloody shootout with police in Durban has risen to 6. 5 suspects, allegedly robbing a cash-in-transit vehicle, were shot dead by police. A bystander shot in the crossfire died yesterday. A police officer is also fighting for his life in hospital after also being shot.
Umgeni Road, always teeming with shoppers, resembled a war zone. A gun battle ensued between police and suspects who tried to rob a cash van. The shootout lasted for about 15 minutes. The suspects were allegedly fleeing with an undisclosed amount of cash after robbing a cash-in-transit vehicle. It's believed a gang of men had just robbed this cash-in-transit vehicle. Police responded to an emergency call. 1 suspect was gunned down in a shootout with police. 5 other suspects fled the scene. The police pursued them to the nearby residential area of Palok. Here, 4 more suspects were shot and killed. A bystander was also shot dead. 3 civilians were injured. 1 suspect believed to be the driver of the getaway car fled the scene. Witnesses say they heard a gunfire and saw men fleeing with bags of money.
We were buying food when we heard gunshots. When we looked around, we saw this car and the people in it shooting at the police, and the police shot back. We ran for our lives and lay on the ground.
Police are investigating.
A number of firearms has been recovered from the suspects there, and also the box was with cash. Box of cash, box with cash was also recovered at the scene. At the moment, we are at the scene waiting for the local fingerprints record center to come and attend the scene.
The suspects are believed to be linked to other crimes in the country. 5 9mm pistols and a rifle were confiscated by police. Ngisi Kumalom, SABC News, Palok.
MPs and MPLs from across the continent will look at the impact of new industries and how they affect working women. This will be discussed at a 2-day conference hosted by Parliament starting today. 250 delegates are expected to attend.
Closing the gender gap is hard enough. Now, with the world in the midst of the 4th industrial revolution, women may be affected by the impact of new technologies. Parliament says it needs to keep an eye on this and be prepared for any fallout.
One of the activities that the Women Caucus does is to look at how our legislation as lawmakers are actually sensitive to improving the lives of women. Secondly, looking at public resources, how these, in terms of their allocation and spend, are used to improve the lives of women.
This is just one of the issues being discussed. Also on the agenda, whether current legislation positively impacts on the lives of women across the continent. This conference comes after the UN's 61st Commission on the State of Women held in March. It is expected to adopt a declaration which would inform discussion at the 62nd session next year, providing an African perspective. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
Now to one of the stories of the day. Police will today exhume 2 graves at Chitava outside Thohoyandou in Limpopo. This after a 17-year-old girl claimed that her 24-year-old ex-husband has been desecrating graves to harvest body parts. She alleges that the man sells the parts to a local traditional healer. Police spokesperson Mutalefa Mujapelo says the bodies will be examined to verify if any parts are missing. Meanwhile, 5 suspects allegedly responsible for cannibalism in East Court have abandoned their bail application following a brief appearance at the magistrate court yesterday. The 5 men were charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder. 2 weeks ago, one of the suspects handed himself in to police, claiming that he was tired of eating human flesh.
5 men in the dock. One of them broke down in tears. The so-called cannibal syndicate was expected to apply for bail. Instead, they decided to abandon their applications. Outside court, hundreds protested, carrying placards demanding that the suspects be denied bail. 2 weeks ago, one of the suspects handed himself over to the police, claiming to be tired of eating human flesh.
As women in Wembezi, we are tired of these people. We want to deal with them ourselves because the police are just taking way too long.
We don't know what their intentions were. Perhaps they were sent by traditional healers. We don't know.
2 of the 5 suspects are reportedly traditional healers, but their colleagues in the profession say the 2 are plain criminals and that they should not be associated with their practice.
We don't support what has happened. Murderers kill people in our name. Real healers don't kill. They don't use human organs for healing. They use traditional medicine.
Some of the female body parts recovered were found hidden under rocks. The Hlatloayo family is adamant the remains belong to their 25-year-old daughter who went missing a month ago. The family claims clothes and accessories found at the scene belong to her. Police are now conducting DNA tests.
Her sister went to identify the clothes, and when she got there, the police showed her the clothes as they were not allowed to see the remains. She saw that the clothes belonged to her sister, and that gave us assurance that it definitely was her because she left wearing the same clothes.
The case has been postponed to the 28th of next month for further investigations. Sbonga Gonkambata, SABC News, Escort.
And so it is that we ask you today, what do you think should happen to people found guilty of cannibalism? We gave you 2 options to consider. One is, should they be sent for psychological treatment, or should they face a maximum prison sentence? Interestingly enough, 33% believe that psychological treatment is what's required, whereas an overwhelming majority of you, 67% that is, say a maximum prison sentence is what should be passed down on those found guilty of cannibalism. And that's exactly why we've asked Elvis to take on this conversation, because he's got a very interesting guest with him.
Well, that's correct, Kendall, because the community in Escort in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, they protested and chanted slogans outside the local magistrate's court during the appearance of the 5 people who were allegedly found with body parts. A group of traditional healers were part of the protest. The suspects were arrested after one of them went to a local police station and voluntarily admitted to cannibalism. Now, it is alleged that 2 of the accused are traditional healers, while the other 2 are said to be working for the traditional healers. The 5th suspect were arrested last week. The accused are facing 2 charges, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and possibly cannibalism. Now, you heard earlier in our program, we spoke to the Traditional Healers Organization, and they distanced themselves from these so-called traditional healers. They say they are charlatans. So we are joined in studio now by Cara Ronquest. She's a dietitian from Natalie Matt. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Cara, first and foremostly, what do you make of people eating human flesh? Is there any nutritional value to it?
Sure. To be honest with you, Elvis, when looking in the literature, there's actually not much literature about the nutritional value of meat, but from what I've been able to put together is that Yeah, it's not better than eating your normal meat, so your chicken,
beef.
Yeah, it's not different to that. And also, human flesh is very fatty, so that's also not very good. It's not really healthy for us to be eating a lot of fatty flesh either.
There are some dangers attached to it. We spoke to a professor a little bit earlier when you eat the brain. Talk to us about that and what are the consequences of that?
Okay, so specifically looking at eating the brain, so there's also been something called prion disease. So I don't know if you're aware of prion disease. But what these are, just to explain what it is. So prions are mutated proteins that basically change shape and structure, and then it changes the function of these proteins as well. And this then affects other proteins in the brain, and that can eventually lead to brain degeneration, and it can also lead to loss of motor function. And yeah, so it's cell death in the brain, not good for the brain either, and it can even lead to death.
So psychologically, that person that's eating the brain will be affected?
Psychologically and even just physiologically, not both ways, definitely.
Now, I've talked about the nutritional value, but what leads one to craving for human meat, if any?
I can't imagine, to be honest, what leads to that. I mean, I would rather prefer to have my chicken or my beef, like you say. So I don't know what it is, but I think the psychological problems, that's obviously not within my scope, but definitely one can consider that.
What is your message to people out there today that is either craving or even thinking about eating human flesh, and what are the alternatives?
Well, I wouldn't advise one to eat meat, or the flesh of humans. I'd rather advise you to try and opt for your other options, your animal options, because then you won't be put in for committing murder.
Yes. What are the options available to people that really want to eat healthy, generally?
Okay, so eating healthily, so getting enough of all food groups, your carbohydrates, proteins, and your fats. Don't exclude any of those groups. Your protein sources, good protein sources, try to go for the lean options, like obviously your chicken, your fish, which is high in your essential fatty acids. Getting also a wide variety of different sources, even your legumes, so your beans, lentils, we encourage people to eat more of that, and obviously a lot of vegetables. Yes.
Now, some people would buy the healthy option, like, for instance, chicken, but then they would fry it and deep fry it for that matter. Is that a healthy option?
Not necessarily, so trying to find healthier ways of cooking your meat. If you could use a bit of olive oil or your canola oil, so those are your unsaturated fats, which are not solid at room temperature. Rather using those oils, I wouldn't advise deep frying foods.
In closing, if we look at a healthy option for living, what is the sort of balance that one needs to create in terms of one's diet?
Balance, just to get a wide variety of all the different food groups, as I've said before. And then, yes, also to make sure you're getting enough exercise and enough sleep. So all those things, all of that ties together.
Because that makes a balance, because some people leave one for the other. They would eat healthy, but then they won't exercise.
I think we all...
Cara, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. Cara Ronquist, she's a dietitian, Natalie Matt, and talking to us about the dangers of eating human flesh. And of course, she gave you an option to eat healthy and create that balance. Buy the healthy food, cook them, eat them properly, and of course, exercise. You can't leave that one out of the equation. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back after that.
I'm Marcelo Torres, and this is SBT, one of the leading TV networks in Brazil.
I am host of the political debate program Crosstalk. I'm very pleased to be with you at this very important event.
We are India's largest 24-hour news network, and I look forward to the opportunity of talking about BRICS.
My name is Criselda Lewis from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. See you in Beijing.
I look forward to welcoming my counterparts from the other BRICS countries in a first-ever 5-way televised debate.
If you ask this Irish master whiskey distiller why sometimes whiskey is spelled with an E and sometimes without, he'd say,
Oh, to be sure. You fare so good, look. It's the whole thing. They're back and get off in the whiskey without the E.
Yeah, didn't catch that. But if you asked us the difference, we'd tell you that every whiskey from around the world is spelled without the E, except for Irish and American whiskies. Cheers. Tops at Spa. Good whiskey, good advice, no Irish accents.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the advice of our elders? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Softness of the Lime. It's a book. It tells a story of passion and integrity, love and betrayal. The story is set in 1782 in the bustling settlement of the Cape of Good Hope. Traders, politicians, farmers and fortune seekers compete for goods, land and power. Battered and sold into slavery as a child, Lena yearns for the Madagascan highlands from within the confines of a master's townhouse. Now, to talk to us about the book, we are joined in studio in Parliament by Maxine Case. A very good morning to you, Maxine, and welcome.
Thank you, Elvis. I'm glad to be here.
Now, softness of the lime, that is fatal to the bird. That's a piece taken out of the book. The Malagasy proverb that tells us about the inspiration about this particular book. I want you to tell me more about this book.
This book has really been a labor of love. It's taken me 3 years to write, and there were many times when I thought it wouldn't see the light of day. It's inspired by a story of my own slave ancestors, and it's one I've always wanted to tell. When other children were told more benign stories, I was told stories about slaves, stories of insurrection, marooned slaves, slaves who hid away from their masters. And I think it's quite fascinating now that those were the stories I was told at, 5, 6 years old? And so I was always aware of my slave ancestry. But the way my granny used to tell the story was a love story. And as young as I was, I knew that it couldn't really be love, because after all, this woman was this man's slave, and if he really loved her, I mean, what do you think? That he would have freed her.
Now talk to us about the character Lena, because that's the character you're referring to. What is it that drove her to be close or even attached to her master, Geert?
You know, I don't think she was close or attached to him. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the relationship was expediency. But I didn't see her as being greedy or having ulterior motives. She was a woman who tried to make the best of a bad situation. And I mean, how do you make the best of being a slave? So it explored her life before slavery and her adjustments to being a slave.
Now, this story reverberates so much in similarity to the story of the Khoi slave girl Kretua, or Eva, with her master Jan van Riebeeck, and then of course her later husband, the Danish husband that she had, which was also the first recorded mixed marriage in South Africa. Is there a similarity or a connection to that story?
You know, I don't know the relationship that Kretua had with Jan van Riebeeck. I don't think that it was a love relationship. I think there was a big age difference. I do know that she later married this Danish slave. I think he was a surgeon. Again, I think relationships at the Cape during that time were really a matter of expediency. There weren't many women here.
Yes.
So one of the questions in Softness of the Lime is whether the master would marry his slave, and spoiler alert, he doesn't. So I think it's interesting to explore the parallels, but I do think that Lena's story and Krotoa's story are vastly different.
Mm-hmm. So talk to us about Lena's story in Softness of the Lime, and what is the journey that that she goes through and that she's exposed to during that period with her master?
You know, from the very beginning, I wanted to speak about a slave's life before enslavement. And I think many books that deal with slavery as a theme don't regard the prehistory of a slave. So ultimately, Lena had very few choices. And in studying slavery, I realized that women bore the brunt of it. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to explore what that life must be like.
Yes.
But
now,
I knew I couldn't only tell her story. I had to look at what Geert's life would have been like and what caused him to make the decisions he did.
Now, reading the book, it seems like the relationship between Lena and Geert changed dramatically after he got married. Tell us about that.
Well, I think a third wheel is always going to throw a spanner in the works. I think part of me thinks now about Princess Diana's marriage that's been in the media so much, and definitely wasn't a case like that. But, you know, Geert made promises to Lena, and then suddenly when it was no longer in his best interest to carry on making those promises, he took a wife. And sometimes I feel as if I've done a disservice to his wife in that you know, she doesn't get much voice, doesn't get much dialogue of her own, because I think that women at the Cape, white women at the Cape or European women were treated, you know, pretty badly too.
Mm-hmm. Now,
it really was a man's world.
Yes. Maxine, in closing, where can people get hold of the book, Softness of the Lime, and what next for you?
I'm actually busy working on a documentary based on this true story. And I would like to continue the story of Lena and Geert, whether it's through themselves or their children. And I must say that I'm really impressed by how the bookshops have come on board in promoting this book. It seems to be everywhere. It's well supported, so at any good bookstore.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and joining us, Maxine. And all the best of luck.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Alvis.
All right, that was the author of the book Softness of the Lime, Maxine Case. You can pick it up at your nearest bookstore. Now, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts is holding hearings on the National Treasury Integrated Financial Management System. Former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has been criticized for the manner in which his department handled this controversial multi-billion rand project when he was still the Finance Minister. For more on this, let's now go to Parliament.
Investors and so on, trying to convince people that we have a tightly managed ship as the Treasury, and explaining and demonstrating and engaging, we then, on one side, also have to deal with these challenges. And I'm not using that as an excuse. But I have stopped. I have seen the need. And as much as I'm doing all of these other things, I was also systematically looking, engaging. I must have had, and the audit committee chair is here, I've had 3-4 engagements with the audit committee, independent engagements, one-on-ones, with the audit committee chair, to just understand what exactly is happening in IFMS from her point of view, from an audit committee point of view. I've spoken. I have, in the Treasury itself, because I didn't have enough time, I've asked 2 senior DDGs, to help me speak to individuals, everyone in the Treasury who's responsible for this, to understand, so that the day I act with knowledge and information. Okay. Because it was not an easy period for me. So I have stopped IFMS payments. I'm going to be restructuring
the management office chair, the PMO. The PMO, as much as about 4 weeks ago, I called the whole IFMS team. We've got 1,200 staff, as you know, and I might not claim to know all. I said to the Office of the Accountant General, I want to meet each and every person, including a PA, who works on IFMS. I met them. You will be surprised here to know that we've got only 4 people, 5 including Lindy, who works on IFMS, on a project that has spent so far 2.2 billion, which is worrying, which is very worrying, because you have a director and 2 deputy directors and a chief director, and even in her case, she is not full-time on the job. She works 50%. She's employed as Chief Director, Technical Support Services in the Accountant General's office. She shouldn't be in IFMS because that's not her core role. An accountant by profession who should actually be supporting the work that she has to do. So I have decided, with the permission from the minister, I'm going to be restructuring the Project Management Office of IFMS. And I'm going to be beefing it up.
You see, sir, if it was your house, I don't have a problem. It's a very good process you could put up for your own house. Here we're dealing with government. This is people's money, sir. And I'm saying to you, this is what they say, your own internal audit. Now, you see, this is the hope you are saying we must sell to South Africans. It says on inadequate, non-existent financial and operating controls in that IFMS. Non-compliance to laws and regulations in that institution, right under Treasury. Now, the domestic worker that they are counting here that is supposed to be cleaning an office has got nothing to do with this. We are talking about people who are equipped, who have got skills. We say to you, sir, that we invite Treasury with hope that they are doing a good job, they themselves, and says to departments as they sit here, National Treasury, can you comment? And solely would comment with confidence, because we then hope that Treasury is organized. Now, if such a unit of such high cost inside National Treasury in itself can even run its own books, how do you expect us to be able to talk to South Africans about it? And the money which you don't worry about continues going. Billions are being spent on a particular project that is not delivering. That could have made it possible for us, because same as procurement. Procurement is still here. When Kenny Brown came to us, he spoke so very eloquent and very hopeful that procurement under the National Treasury is doing very well. Now, internal audit says, hey, wait. You are being misled by this department. There's no truth in what they're telling you every day that you're talking to them. And all the correspondences that goes to different departments under your authority, putting them under pressure to improve their services. If they can see this report, they would then be asking parliamentarians, what are you doing? You put us under pressure. We take paperwork to National Treasury, even on SASA. They spend the whole time there in National Treasury to be able to be found that they are financially prudent. And here is it internally in your own organization. You can't run a proper organization. How can we trust you? That's the basis of what we wanted to interrogate here. That, I mean, it talks about inadequate payment procedures. There's no procedures of payment inside National Treasury. Now you go and call a domestic worker to talk to her about what? Poor woman there or man, whoever is cleaning the office now must answer about you not being able to pay and have proper procedures in your own institution. Where does it come in? You will never be able to account because it's not trained. What is wrong with Treasury? This is what we want to know. You are not helping us, sir. In all these other things you are lamenting, you are not helping us. Don't jump to conclusion. Take us, because this is what we do to departments. We take departments on the basis of the work that is and the information provided by the Auditor General, National Auditor General. And you are already at war with it because you don't want to be seen as a qualified entity Now you're pulling the national treasury. I mean the national audit. You don't want the general auditor to come with that finding so that parliamentarians can be exposed to the inadequacies of national treasury. And this is what we are wanting answers from, sir. All the other things you are saying to us, the end product of when you came in 3 months. For us, you were there. You are supposed to know what has happened inside the entity itself. And IFMS, I'm saying to you, whatever you are saying, we have spent $1 billion since 2005. And the amounts are increasing. But the internal audit says there's a lot of inadequacies inside National Treasury. How do you convince us, sir? The internal audit report is in front of you. It's got 54 findings and hard 49 findings that are catastrophic to a department that must give hope to South Africans.
Chair, allow me to say the following. 2 things, 2 profound things in terms of how Honorable Boy is approaching this conversation. One, I don't think we want to. Honorable Boy is bringing constantly, Chair, and I appeal to you, 2 issues that are not in the agenda: the Auditor General, and we are not bullying the Auditor General. At no point did I mention that we are bullying the Auditor General, and I wish that if that conversation must happen, let's open it and we can engage on it.
Okay, all right.
DG, I told you that I'm not employed by you, and will never employ me. Take that. I'm not coming here to be prescribed by you how to ask questions. That you can do to your own children. I'm not your child. I'm not your child. That you can do to your own children and prescribe to them how they should engage you. Here, I'm doing my work here. Here, I'm doing my work. If you don't have answers, you don't have answers. But don't come and tell me that don't ask me about this or that. The Auditor General is key. It's a constitutional body. And if ever you don't want to be able for them to do and monitor your work, say so. And then we will leave our own constitutional obligations and come and listen to you because you are the new constitution of South Africa. We must read you and not read what is written in front of us. I told you that we are guided by the PFMA, not by your house orders. We don't listen to you. I'm not your child. You're not going to come and tell me what to think and how to think.
All right.
Stop that, DJ. Okay. Get out of it.
All right. No, that's fine. The Auditor General part, leave it out. You have already answered to it that no, you are not fighting with the Auditor General in terms of findings. That's okay. And, well, I would say it's good that he has raised it and you have been able to confirm that it's not true. Because, as someone said, he can't unsee what he has seen. It's read in papers that there are these things. And so far, people think that is what is happening. So if that is not the case, let's leave it at that. But the issue, and I think it goes back to what I said, that our sense, we hold National Treasury very high. But if you get lapses, because what it means is that Lindy was actually not doing her work as the person assigned to oversee the project and the process. That's what it means. All those inadequacies. When departments come here, we always talk about problems with project management. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. That's exactly what she did or she did not do. When he spoke about documents not being there when they are requested, in fact, on 2 occasions there to extend the deadline, she's the person who should be able to say, well, indeed, and I'm sure you should have asked her when you look at the findings, what happened here? Because that's the person who is the points person for you as management. And then to have said, no, on this one, no, it's not true, we gave them everything. Or, yeah, indeed, this company and that company did not give documents. Or, from our side, this is what has happened. So these are things we find in all departments, and to get them in National Treasure, unless if we're mistaken, in having a high regard for National Treasure. I think that's where it is. So I think the issue of his concerns around the findings is that your officials who are supposed to do the right, before we go to internal audit, that they've done a good job, which I agree with you. It is one part, but the other part is the fact that your officials, directors, chief directors, have failed you in a project that at the beginning you said is very complex, it's very important, but then your own officials treat it like it's an everyday thing. You say there are 5 people from your office. And yet I thought when we migrated from IFMS 1, we would then have picked up the lessons. What has happened is that the PMO is staffed with consultants. And the way it is, consultants are on their own. So I think inadequate monitoring and control from your senior officials would have led to that situation. And we'll pass it. Because that is a fact, so we can't sit around it forever and ever and ever. Comrade Boy, are you done?
I'll allow you, Chair, to engage. I've not got any answers. I mean, I fairly was expecting the DG to have delivered. The DG is not delivering. I mean, he's talking politics like he's a politician.
Okay.
Suppose I'm saying to you that they say IFMS payments, adequate and ineffective review, inadequate payment procedures, lack of project cost monitoring. Now, at that level, when you are a DG, you then come and tell us that, no, you ask people to stop payment. What have you done to those that were doing this work? That your own internal audit. He brings Lindy here, but Lindy can't even give, no formal independent quality assurances. She can't provide that. It's catastrophic from Treasury. It doesn't come from anywhere else. It doesn't come from correctional services that we are battling to get right. If the institution that he is spearheading, he doesn't know what's going on, I don't understand what we are going to spend our time on. I just want to give other members to see if they've got issues, but for me, the DG has not provided answers on the detail of his own report internally. It's not a report that's written by you, Chairperson. I can see her articulating it quite clearly. I've been preparing the whole night.
Yeah, I've read it.
Yeah, but you can hear that the DG doesn't know this report. He knows the politics about it and how to defend his stuff. Now we are becoming politicians. He's getting angry with me. For me, he must talk to what he knows that is catastrophic.
All right.
The problem with National Treasury and SCOPA, we deal with details. And this is the details, that's why I had to refer him to this particular document, so that he can deal with the details and give answers to those particular details.
Okay.
And he's failing me there.
All right, that's fine. Comrades, let me go to Honorable Ross. Ross?
Thank you.
Maybe just have 3 or 4 questions?
Yes,
so
3 or 4 questions. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Chairperson, noting the line of questioning and the answers, I'd just like to state for the record that I agree with my colleague that I think that there's a crisis in the making, and we would like a SCOPA to be helpful to address this crisis. I think it's very important for the country, it's very important for Treasury, but it's also important for CETA and other role players to step up to the plate in solving this crisis. It is of great concern that there's a crisis, but there's also a little bit of a highlight in terms of audit report that is very functional and helpful, and I believe that is very helpful. Chairperson, if I can ask the DG, what is the current systems that you use in Treasury to affect the asset management and also to affect the payments of thousands of state employees? What are the 2 systems that you're currently using?
Currently, we are to pay state employees. We are using PERSAL, and the asset we're using Logis.
for the asset management systems. These systems, DG, has been in existence for about 40 years. It is, and you're trying to modernize the system to move to the integrated financial management system. Now, what is the risks in terms of moving away from these systems? And of course, you've engaged with CETA, and that would be my next question. But if you can, what are the risks in terms of migrating from this system to the new system, in terms of perhaps complete collapse of functionality?
The implications are huge. That's why we are building parallel to the day-to-day operations of the two systems. That's why IFMS is or was seen to be the solution, because we have to be comfortable that we are able to migrate without causing harm to the payment system.
No, absolutely correct. I believe that is a very important point, that we note the massive risk in terms of. But unfortunately, in this process of migration, it is of concern to the committee that R1 billion has been misspent to a certain extent. But we'll come to that just a bit later. But just in terms of the different key program stakeholders, the Department of Public Service and Administration, and we've seen several ministers over a period of time, and we've also seen the role of CETA. Would you agree with me that it was not solely the responsibility in the past of Treasury, but it was certainly highlighted that CETA played a prominent role in terms of functionality, in terms of implementing these systems, and that it is in the public domain that we find incompetence in CETA with regards to technology and systems that, you know, in terms of driving the process, and that we also found some vested interest in CETA being responsible for non-compliance, so to speak. Would you agree on that?
I think the last part, I wouldn't want you to commit yourself in making comments on your colleagues. Let's take it as a statement from his side, and CETA is here. They must respond to what he has said.
All I was going to say was that it is critical and important that all three stakeholders engage in dealing with this thing. So without getting to the details, but it's important that both CETA ourselves and DPSA are critical in the implementation of this system. So whether that's working efficiently or not is another thing.
So to summarize, that you accept joint responsibility with CETA and the DPSA?
Certainly, we do accept joint responsibility.
Now, I'd just like to, in terms of the established government structure and the organigram that you've presented, just for clarity, the IFMS steering committee, was this only established in terms of the second phase of the project, not on IMFS number 1? Was there a steering committee previously responsible for taking these decisions?
To the knowledge I'm having, and colleagues are here, they can correct if I'm mistaken, my understanding was that the steering committee as we have it now was for IFMS 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the question is, did you have it on IFMS 1? Did you have a steering committee?
I wouldn't know, but I don't think so. The colleagues are suggesting that no, we did not have a project steering committee in this current form in IFMS 1. We did not.
Just in terms of proper coordination, I would imagine that would have been important in IFMS 1. But congratulations, at least there's a steering committee. But now I would like to get to the bottom of the steering committee, just to go a little bit deeper into it. In terms of the risk assessment within the steering committee, I think that would be very important. To establish the risk, whether this can fly or not, what can we do, what are the technical shortages, and I think there was a decision taken that you go to the World Bank and also Ernst & Young, which I think I will support, because you're looking for competence to help establish and to help the migration. Now, in terms of the risk committee, how functional is your risk committee, and what were the risks that the risk committee alluded you to?
I just want to find out, is it risk committee or steering committee?
Look, in the organigram, you have the IFMS program committee. On the right, there's a risk committee, and then the audit committee. Is the risk committee the audit committee, or is it a separate committee?
just switch the mic on.
Okay, sorry, the blue refers to treasury committees. It's both the risk committee of the National Treasury and the audit committee of the National Treasury there.
Okay, fine. Now, the audit committee of the National Treasury, what role are they playing, and what were the risks that what are the current risks that they identified?
The risks are largely, as per the earlier conversation, identified as an example in the payments review. The audit committee has always been concerned about the implementation of the IFMS project. They've always been concerned about money spent without having the requisite, what do you call it, progress that can be demonstrated through, as an example, having spent $1 billion or $2 billion. So that would have been the interest of the audit committee, to a point where the internal audit report highlighted or vindicated what they would have seen as suspicions that this project might be having challenges in it. So I think through that they were able then to pick up, because their interest has always been on the implementation of the project.
Yes, can I then just ask, in terms of the risk committee or risk impact, and I see in the internal report, and that's page 76 of this report.
Just, your last two questions.
Yeah, I'm wrapping
then
up.
I'll come back to you.
You see, in terms of risk and impact, not provided by the client, which is, if I believe it's Accenture, ineffective cost management, ineffective project management, potential fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And that brings us to the PFMA, and that my colleague was so strict about, which we all support and endorse, in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, to prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure, to prevent irregular expenditure and unauthorized expenditure. Now, in terms of this specific page in your internal audit report, ineffective cost management, ineffective project management, and potential fruitless and wasteful expenditure, what would your views be in terms of this? Can it be addressed? We've seen, is it in your view that R1 billion rand in this instance, could perhaps be classified as fruitless and wasteful? Because we clearly see, if you look just below in the page, the report indicates, in addition, management should perform a value for money assessment. And where no value for money was received, management should ensure that amounts paid to the service providers are recovered. Do you have any plans in terms of a recovery plan from service providers where there was money paid, where there was absolutely no value for money? And are we talking about R1 billion where there's no value for money?
We currently don't have any plans to recover any monies, because two things, I think, from the Honorable Ross's questions. One, I think we have not ourselves said or come to conclusion that this was fruitless or wasteful expenditure in terms of implementation. However, based on information that we know, and we are engaging, and I'm going back to the question that I thought, and I'm happy that it's coming out in this fashion, that in terms of that process we are currently engaged with, the Auditor General, in terms of our engagement, has classified certain types of expenditure along those lines. Our understanding, which is a normal process, before a final audit is issued, is engaged.
We know those processes.
So yeah, now, what we're doing then is to come to that conclusion, and that conclusion then will, once there's agreement that is fruitless or wasteful, we can then look at options available to us as per this recommendation.
Your last one.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just a very important question with regards to timelines. We have the current two systems that you've indicated. When do we envisage, can we have the new modernized system in place for South Africa? And when can we find solace in terms of to say, yes, we have a new system, South Africans can be at peace, that Treasury is setting the example?
We have slide 25 in terms of the implementation approach and timelines. So they're all listed there in terms of where we want to be at in 21-22. But I must caution and quickly caution, based on experiences, because I don't want to come back here and say, DG, you said you will be done and dusted in 2021. There could obviously be challenges along the way that are anticipated, and we obviously have to deal with that as and when. But this is currently what is in place, and we want to achieve all of this rollout by 21-22, financial year 21-22.
All right, Professor? 3, 4 questions.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, DG and your colleagues, thank you for coming to Scopa to engage with us on this very serious issue. DG, I'd like to just chat to you about 2 things, budgeting and planning, and part of planning budgeting, and capacity. Now, am I right in saying, we'll work through this quickly, hopefully, am I right in saying that we started this process in around about 2005? Okay. Do you know what the amount was that was budgeted at that time? What was the envisaged? I don't know if you were in Treasury at that time in another position, or were you around at all, if any of your colleagues were. But what was the amount that was envisaged at that time to set up IFMS? Do you know?
I wouldn't know the exact number, but the number that informed our processes beyond 2013 after going to cabinet was 4.3 billion.
Okay, you're jumping 10 years ahead. I want to go back to 2005. When the cabinet signed this off, because, effectively I want to go to the heart of this matter. When cabinet in 2005 said, IFMS sounds like a fantastic idea, let's do it, did they have any projection at that stage as to what it was going to cost?
Can indicate if they've got the number, Chair, but I can imagine one cannot go to cabinet without showing the financial implications of what you're presenting. If we have to go back into the...
DG, I appreciate your speculation, but if you do, I'm not like my colleagues who insist that you have to answer everything. If you have colleagues here who can assist with expert information, we would like that. I think it's important for us to know what was this envisaged that we were going to spend on this thing.
All right, let's check.
That's important, Chair, very important.
Chair, would you...
Just pull the mic closer to you.
Sorry about that. No, the accounting officer is actually correct. The 4.3 billion was the amount initially touted for the rollout of IFMS up to implementation. So when we resubmitted now...
When you say initially, you mean 2005?
The 2005, yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
But just to add to that, even in our current, the latest 2013 CAB memo, we still reflected the same amount. So the intention was, even if we have changed course from IFMS 1 to 2, the budget does not change for full implementation. It must still be achieved within 4.3 billion. That is the situation as is. Unless, yeah.
I'm concerned, Chair. You just said that the budget on 2013's model is 4.3 billion. Now your colleague is saying it was 4.3 billion in 2005. Can you provide us with the cabinet memo or the documentation at that time that says 4.3 billion? Because you must remember, DG, your department is the department that works with SCOPA and other bodies to try and ensure that we have tight financial control. And so I want to be sure that this department that stands with us in doing that, in actual fact, is within its budget. Because we lament all departments all the time that they go over their budgets. So do you have, and I'm sorry that I'm less trusting, but do you have the document at that time that says that's the amount we're looking at?
Chair, one will have to check in terms of existing cabinet protocols and regulatory environment if we are able to provide that cabinet memo to the members' request. We can double check that. I'm not sure, but I'm saying if by 2013, based on the cap memo of 2013, or based on the going to cabinet, we went to cabinet with a 4.3 billion number, and I'm comfortable now that my colleagues have assisted that it is the same number that we said in 2005, and when we went back to cabinet, we said we will remain within the 4.3 billion budget.
Okay. Chair, I'd just like the committee to request that document, because that's going to be telling along the line. Now, okay, so
I thought you would be interested in.
I am very interested, but if they don't have the information, I don't want to argue for half an hour about it. I'd like to see that document.
No.
I know our ministers are jittery about that sort of thing at the moment. But I think if you're spending R1 billion of public financing, it's no longer a secret.
No, I'm referring to something completely different.
Okay,
but
thanks,
if in 2005 the budget was 4.3, and they've already used R1 billion, and then in 2013 they say it's 4.3,
yeah.
So it means, yeah, just that arithmetics.
No, thank you, Chair. That's a very good point. I was going to get there eventually, but thank you for highlighting it now, Chair, because it's very valid. So, we have a situation where we spent just over R1 billion, is that correct so far? Okay, and we discovered that we had a system that doesn't work. Can I ask, is there anybody in the room that was involved in the planning in 2005? Because clearly your planning ability has failed woefully. A lot of my family are involved in construction, and they always say when you're building something, even if it's the simplest thing, assess the job. Then they say, think it through. In other words, if you want to build a wall, you see how many bricks it's going to take, how much cement it's going to take. You bring in experts if you're not a builder yourself, and you plan the thing out properly. And then you shouldn't have a wall that should cost R1,000 that suddenly costs 50,000 Rand. That shouldn't happen because you assess the job properly. So is there anyone in this room who can give us any level of indication as to whether or not this thing was planned properly? Or what level of planning was done? Yes or no, DG? Is there anybody here who can help us?
I don't know, to the best of my knowledge, there's nobody who was involved directly with the project in 2005 in the room.
Okay. DG, would you concede? I'm trying to get my head around, if you decide that you're going to spend in 2005 4.3 billion Rand worth of funds, public funds, obviously that's going to involve complexity. How is it that in your timeline here, let's just find that again. When did you discover that this thing was a problem? You do have in your timeline, I apologize, I had it here. Yeah, in 2007 you had a problem. I'm just trying to dig down into the nitty-gritty here because we need to answer these questions. How did Treasury realize they had a problem when they hadn't done any planning? Because surely when you plan a system like this, you assess the job and you say, right, we've got Persol, we've got this, we've got that, these are the problems, and you do proper planning and come up with a proper job. How is it possible? And DJ, I'm going to give you an example. If you ask me, I'm a builder, to build you a wall in 2005, and in 2007 you come, where's my wall? And I ran into challenges. You're going to say, mate, we agreed on a price of whatever to build that wall. 2 years later, you still haven't built and you tell me you got challenges. You see, because DG, that's your money. That's what upset you. You are now presiding over something that's been dragging on for 12 years. but it's just okay. We'll just carry on spending money on it. I'm trying to drive down into who was responsible for the planning for this. Can you answer? Because then we'll move on to present, because obviously that's everyone here.
Chair, through you, it's difficult to just zoom in exactly in terms of how honourable member would like us to respond, but because I can't get exactly the question properly.
My question is who was responsible for the planning in 2005? And were those people taken to task in 2007 when they reported back to Cabinet and said, sorry, we're very poor planners? Did anything happen? Do you know? If you don't know, that's fine. But I just want to know if any consequence management happened to those people who did the initial planning. And are any of them in the room?
No, SITA may be able to help. As I said, from our side, there was nobody who was here on this project in 2005. But all I know, some project like this would not have put SITA at the center of the planning.
Yeah, okay. Well, I hope SITA does not respond like you in relation to their members who might have been there, because the question that is asking relates to, you know that by 2007 there were problems. So fine, there were problems, but then was there anything done to those who planned in 2005? Because clearly it means there was no planning at the cost of so much. Okay, SITA, from your side, because I don't think SITA would know what happened to officials in National Treasury. They'll probably talk to what happened on their side. From SITA's side, is there anything you know that happened to those who were responsible for planning, for implementing the cabinet decision in 2005, when it was discovered 2 years later that there are challenges?
No, Chairperson, I don't know who was responsible or the nature of SITA's involvement in the planning. But it's something that we can find out and respond back.
You have not interested yourself in finding out so far, since you came in?
I've interested myself in a few other things that involve SITA.
And I'm talking about IFMS?
Yes, that involved SITA and IFMS, but not who was responsible for the planning in 2005.
I thought that's where we would always start. Who were the people who were involved? But anyway.
Chair, that leads me to my next question. After spending 1 billion rand, who in this room can answer me as to what we've got? What do we have in our hands for 1 billion rand? What have we got? It's 1 billion rand.
Chair, if I may, Roger Naidu from the SITA Program Management. We have the HRM module that is implemented at TPSA, and we have the procurement module that is implemented at National Treasury. That's inclusive of asset management and catalog management.
Okay, when was the last money spent on this?
In terms of development?
How long has it been lying dormant?
It's been currently used as maintenance and support on that applications.
So it's currently in play?
Yes.
All right. Okay, now the 3.3 billion rand that was agreed in, okay, the 4.3 agreed in 2005, you spent 1 billion so far. What is the remaining money going to be spent on, the 3.3 billion?
Chair, just to maybe clarify, to the 1 billion that we've been referring to was for IFMS 1. For IFMS 2 to date, as of 31st of March, we've spent 1.2 billion. So total spending on budget compared to budget of 4.3 is 2.2 billion now. So it's actually 2.1 billion that will still have to be spent. If you
okay, that's great, thanks. Okay, so we spent 1 million on IFMS 1. Are we using IFMS 1 at all? Are we using, is that your answer?
Yes, yeah, we are currently using it, and SITA is maintaining and supporting it.
Okay, did it require a lot of upgrades because it sat dormant for a while? Did it sit dormant from 2005-7 when it was developed to 10 years later?
From 2013 onwards, since the reviews, the 3 reviews, so there was a decision to place it on a pause state, that is, do not continue any further enhancement, but rather maintain and support it for the users, current users. So there was no further investment in term.
So, okay, so it was completed in 2007, and 2013 you carried on with it. Is that right? I'm trying to get, sorry, I'm being very, I'm
No,
not
no.
helping you here. I'm trying to work out, because nothing happened, because it's 6 years old, how much does that cost us in extra money? If we'd got it right first time, has that cost us anything extra? This Paul program you're talking about?
If I can give context, from 2005 and 2007, there was not, there was still requirements management and master systems plan and so forth. So actual development did not completed by 2007. By 2012, we had I could say, a working product that was implemented and is being used. So that's where the first IFMS one is.
Okay. So it took 12 years. Is that right? No, 7.
Cheers, yeah, from 2005 to 2000, let's say, implementation 2011, say 12, 7, 6, 7 years.
6, 7 years. Was that the idea in 2005? That should have a working model 7 years later? Was that the plan?
Unfortunately, Chair, I was not there at the time, so
Do
I'm
you,
hoping
think
it was a
do you
plan.
think it was the plan?
I think the plan was to have a working
Is that
system.
how you plan at CETA? Do you think, let's build something and have it ready in 7 years' time? And everybody says, fantastic.
No, Chair.
Is that how you plan?
No, no, not at all. We plan to ensure that we have a full implementation of a product.
So are you appalled and horrified at what's happened here?
Yes, Chair. In terms of IFMS 1, I think when we looked at the business drivers at the time, I think there were decisions made that we needed to look at a hybrid solution. We needed to take the environmental factors into place when we looked at it.
Okay. All right. Now I just want to go into cost drivers. Tia, I'm sorry, I'm being naughty.
All right. All right.
Cost drivers of this, of the 4.3 billion. DG, I don't know if I'm engaged with you or CETA on this, but I see that there is quite a large chunk of cash going into CETA. That we're paying, we seem to be paying a lot of money because we don't have capacity to do it ourselves. We're paying a lot of money outside because we don't have capacity. So can you comment on the capacity of CETA to handle this without using external consultants?
Chair, which slide are you looking at, sir?
I'm trying to find it, but I do remember it. There was a breakdown of the 4.3 billion.
I don't think you even needed the slide. I mean, if you're being paid, you should definitely know it.
Yeah.
And I think the question is more about the capacity of CETA to provide services without relying on external service providers. So the slide is irrelevant.
Chair, for CETA to have full-time capacity on a program of this nature, it takes, it's quite a difficult task in terms of having permanent members doing things. A program is normally where we bring people to do pieces of job and we release them of the obligation. I think CETA's role is in terms of its oversight and advisory, technical advisory that we do. So we partner with service providers in order to deliver on products and services. So to answer your question in terms of CETA's capability to manage, yes, we can manage the oversight, bringing the requisite skills in order to do the development.
Okay.
And some of the stuff, sorry, Chair, some of the stuff we have done on our own. For example, when you look at the asset management and the ones that we said in blue on slide 18, I think. You find those are blue that bespoke on the right under the supply chain. We have done a few of those.
All right. How many exterior consultants are we using for this? Are we ever going to get to the point where we have a CETA that has enough in-house, in-government IT personnel that have the right capacity to design this sort of architecture and put it together? Are we ever going to get there, or as you've said now, is it a stated objective to never get there? We'll always, for time immemorial, make sure we use consultants.
Chair, given the nature of the product, we do intend to provide the capacity to support the architecture and design of the application.
Chairperson, we've just done a business model. We are going to get there. We've defined it clearly, the capability.
As long as you don't do a one step forward, two steps back.
No, Chair. Yeah. In fact, we are very, very clear about the capabilities that SETA has to have internally. And we're also clear that it's capabilities that have to be delivered through external parties for a variety of reasons. So one of the capabilities that have to be delivered by SETA across all services is design and architecture and optimization work. Thank you.
Okay, why are we still not there? Why? You know, we've had many engagements with SETA. We have correctional services. There was a problem with SETA, and there's just normal problems. And SETA, there's problem whenever. In fairness, whenever we deal with any department and we hear the acronym SETA, we all cringe a little bit because we know it's going to be a mess. And I don't want to feel that I'm attacking you today, but I suppose I am. The point is, we need to get to the point where SETA does a proper professional job and it's fully capacitated. Why isn't it after so many years?
Chairperson, through Chair. Yeah. It's a design issue. I mean, it could have been better. The resources of SETA right now, about 60% of two-thirds of financial resources and human resources for maintenance of work and systems, and less than 5% and less than 10% respectively of the financial resources and human resources are for development. That's what has been happening throughout. And our intention right now is to change that and put more resources on development and creation of new value. I'm not sure what would have happened in over the period of SETA's existence to get to that point, but that's the reality.
Well, you should know. I mean, you are the CEO. You don't become CEO and you don't look back to understand what was happening in the institution. You're just looking forward. I mean, really.
Okay. So I've done the data analysis. I know where the status is. I know what it should be in order for us to create value. But I cannot. Okay.
Just a minute.
Yeah. My brother, can you do us a good reflection? Because we know SETA and I know you. And he's correct, the member here. And the chair is correct. That take a few steps back. Because SETA is not performing. And don't mislead us. Yes. Don't mislead us. Don't think that we can't take you to task.
All right.
Please don't do that.
Okay.
And you know that we have dealt with you before. It's not the 2 day only that we have dealt with you. We've known SETA for a very long time. And it's one of the institutions that doesn't have progress. You don't make progress, sir.
All right.
Okay, if we go to slide 14, sorry, I found it eventually. Slide 14 of this presentation. Are you with me? And this comes down to the point I'm trying to make. If you look down there, slide 14, it's the cost element stability cabinet. Professional services, 1.2 billion. So we're spending 1.2 billion. Am I right that that's consultants? Persons outside of the department, outside of SETA.
I don't think it's correctly described, because it talks about configuration, implementation, and change management. So it's not the service
No.
professional.
It says professional services. What do you mean by that?
Read the preceding phrase. It says professional services.
No.
That's why he's asking the question.
When you refer to professional services, you normally refer to bringing in a professional, which obviously means that you're unprofessional. You need professionals.
That's not true, Chair.
Can someone unpack that for us?
Yeah, can you break down 1.2 billion rand? Because of the, that seems like that's a good chunk of what's still to be spent.
Thank you, Chair. The figures in this table, we derived it from a model. So the 1.2 billion was set aside for what we call a system implementer. So this is a professional services or
No, that's
a
fine.
service
but who,
provider.
No, that's fine. But what is professional services? Who are they? Is it CETA? Is it yourselves? Is it some consultants?
It will be what we had estimated at the time. We would use consultants to assist us in
Right, that's
configuring
fine.
the solution.
Whatever you're going to use them, it's consultants. That's
It's
what we want.
consultants.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Thank you for the answer finally. So why, this comes back to what I was talking about. Why do we have to use consultants to the tune of 1.2 billion rand? That is a massive amount of money. How much have we spent so far on consultants to help CETA do their work? On this whole
Chair, through the context of BCX and Accenture in developing certain modules, I think we spent close to, I would say, 300 million as CETA. But that is through a contracted service. Obviously, they bring their professionals in.
Right, no, that's
yes,
fine.
okay, because you don't have the capacity inside CETA to do it. That's
In some of the,
essentially, in the cold light of day, that's what we're saying. You have to bring people in to do it.
I agree.
Yeah. So the question is, on whose watch has CETA not capacitated themselves? So we have to go and spend 1.2 billion rand. Now, you said you spent 300 million. I'm telling you right now that you'll get to 1.2 billion rand, probably more. I'm prepared to bet you 1,000 rand right now that we'll get there, because I know government and how it works. Why don't we have the capacity? It's like Treasury hiring accountants to do the petty cash, yeah?
Chair, when I look at this slide, I look at it as these are cost elements as submitted.
No. That's not the question. The question is, why do we not have capacity? Full stop. It's not.
Acknowledged, Chair. Chair, when we manage projects, my understanding is that this is a temporary organization, which means we bring people to do a piece of job and we release them of that obligation. To have permanent people sitting within CETA to do all this work, I don't think it is a prudent way to do things. Our idea, I believe, when managing programs, is to insource the people in order to boost CETA's capacity in order to deliver. So for CETA not having these capacity, the people sitting in-house, I don't think it's a prudent way to go. So we bring the people for a piece of job when we require them, get them to do the job, and we release them. That's how we capacitate the organization.
Okay, so effectively what you're saying to me is that if you started now, all right, so today is 2017, and I think the projected models, DG's up to 2021, right? So you're telling me that if you were to bring people in to work in the department at a monthly salary, that between now and 2021 it would cost you 1.2 billion rand. There is no ways your salary bill is going to be 1.2 billion rand in 4 years, or even in the entire life of this project, 12 years. 1.2 billion rand for the team of people that you need to do this. Because it's not thousands of people, it's a team. who could do this. But what you're doing is you're going down the road of allowing consultants to come in, put in big contracts, big markups. The guys are laughing all the way to the bank, and the taxpayer is footing the bill because CETA doesn't have the capacity to do their own work. Can you answer that? Do you really think that you would spend 1.2 billion rand on the team that you would need to develop the architecture for this properly? And if you are, I'd like to know what you're going to be paying those RT folks to come and do that work.
Mr. Chair, can I try and answer this question?
Well, I would actually have expected management, the leaders of CETA, to do so now. But I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. I'm just saying that it is odd because these are the people who lead the institution and are accountable, you know, for its work. But let's hear your views.
Mr. Chair, I think the analogy of the building contract was a very good analogy. I think building a project of this nature is no different to building a building. And during the phases of the building, you need different subbies, whether it's a plasterer, whether it's a joiner, whether it's a tiler. A project of this nature needs the same kind of expertise. You'll need a software engineer for a period of time. You need an implementer for a period of time. A, there's a shortage of this kind of skill in the country. B, if we try and hire them, we're going to land up with a overhead in the future that we don't need. And thirdly, we will be able to empower small SMEs and smaller companies to fulfill smaller roles within the project that will solve the bigger picture as we go through the project. So I think a project of this nature, it would be irresponsible, to be honest, to employ all these skills internally, because at the end of the day, we're going to sit with big retrenchment costs and unnecessary skills. And finally, the biggest problem is the skills aren't all available in the open market, and I think that's one of the reasons why we use small skilled boutique software houses to do different functions within this project.
All right.
Okay, thank you for that. And I fully get what you're saying about building. You've heard of a fixed term contract. You don't have to employ people permanently. You can go into a fixed term contract. And then also, is Oracle a small boutique company? 3R Technologies, are they a small boutique? And who was the other bidder? I can't remember. Their name eludes me. They put an objection in. Accenture. Are they small boutique little companies? If you're referring to helping SMMEs, then can you just tell me which small companies have benefited out of this particular deal of this amount that was awarded to Oracle in 2016? Which small startup businesses, little champions of the small man, have been helped?
My understanding is the actual software licenses is Oracle. But when we come to the implementation, and this has been my understanding going forward, that contract has not been signed yet, and that will be the SMEs and other companies that will fulfill those roles. But the core software you have to buy from the vendor. But the only contract that has been awarded, in my understanding from the audit committee, is the actual vendor license agreement.
Well, I thought you would take advantage of that to just venture into some startup companies that have benefited in other projects. But anyway.
Okay, Chair, so what we're talking about here is we're going to spend 422 million and on licensing fees. That's for Oracle. And then annual license maintenance fee is 630. I suppose that's Oracle as well. So that's R1 billion. Okay. All right, so R1 billion with one company. I hope they've got a lot of implementing agents. So is the 1.2 billion rand going to be spent with the small businesses? Is that okay? And can you, and now, right now, so now you've told us that already you've started work on this thing. Can you give us a list of all the small businesses that you've used?
Chair, at the moment, we are entering into phase 2. We have just bought the software. So we are installing the software, and we're also looking at architecture and design.
No, what I want to know is where's the list of the plumbers, the tilers, the joiners, the carpenters, the kitchen fitting guys, all those tradesmen in our analogy, those small businesses that are paying the school fees for kids.
We haven't gotten to them as yet.
So your previous answer that yes is incorrect.
In terms of the small SMEs, I agree, Chair.
All right, then we have a small little item of sundries for 81 million rand. That's quite a chunky amount for sundries. What is that, tea and coffee? Who put that together? I think we're back to you, DG. Sundries is a very dangerous line item because it could be anything. You could actually just cash out sundries and write slush fund. So what is that being spent on, sundries of 81 million rand? I understand from Linda it's an estimate. Do we know where we are on that? On sundries?
Thanks, Chair. It is an estimate, as we indicated earlier, but as we indicated there, for an example, audit fees could come from the training, but we have, because we've got spend against it, both for IFMS 1 and IFMS 2, Chair, at the appropriate time we can give you the details of what exactly we spend that money on.
Right. Okay. Then finally, Sita, what are you charging Treasury for under operating expenses and hosting expenses? That's a total of about R500 million. What are you charging them for? What are you actually doing for
yes,
them?
Hosting is
if we're paying all this other money to professional services and to outside people and small mom and pop businesses, what are you doing?
We are hosting, which is a server infrastructure, which I must say is already live in Maritzburg. I'm hosting the software already. And the operating expenses is the cost of personnel, which are CETA employees that are currently running that environment right now.
So you're renting the hosting space?
No, it's our equipment.
No, I know, but you're renting it to the department?
Yes, we're providing a service, a hosting service to them.
Okay. I suppose that's right from an accounting point of view, but one would, I don't know why interdepartmentally we're not assisting each other and actually having costs. I understand between businesses, but all right. Chair, I'm going to wind up. I've been very naughty. But you've obviously allowed me, but you are a generous chair. DG, please don't be so coy about when you're going to be finished with this and what it's going to cost. You are a man of great importance to our country. We need you to commit and say it's going to be ready then and it's going to cost so much. Because it's quite easy to say, well, it'll be finished sometimes and we'll see what it costs. We don't expect somebody of your importance, sir, to be so wishy-washy. Can you commit, please? Can you give us a commitment today that you are going to ride this violent wild horse and keep it on track and make sure that it comes in on budget or, if possible, under budget? Can you give us a commitment?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the commitment I think I can make to the committee is that we will ensure that we stretch the rand within this budget in terms of getting value for money, one, and two, making sure that every cent that's spent can be accounted for, and that we should stick to time frames. That's all I can commit for. And if need be, along the way, if I don't meet those commitments, Chair, we will inform the committee that we are having challenges here and there. But the commitment I'm making, I think, is saying that in terms of the custodians of public resource and public money, we will ensure that value for money, there's value for money in this project, and we'll ensure that we meet the deadlines, because delay can only cost more and can only not address the issues that Honorable Boy talked about around dealing with corruption, because this essentially is attempting to bring the whole accounting, because the legal systems don't give you that integrated view of what you're spending money on.
All right. Thank you very much. Comrade Kikan.
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, there was acknowledgement that is from the DG earlier on that there were irregularities in the project. And he indicated to us that through the recommendations from the audit committee, they commissioned an audit committee. That is a forensic investigation. Now, in slide 38, I would look at bullet number 1, 2, 3, 5. You are saying the initial advert on the company that was supposed to, or that did the forensic audit, was advertised at 8:20, and it was subsequently changed to 80:20, sorry, and it was subsequently changed to 90:10. Or what were the reasons?
And can I, because the project, the forensic project was an audit committee project. It was not the national, sort of the management process. Can I request the audit committee, internal audit, or the audit committee chair to respond to that, with your permission?
Thank you very much, DG. I think it was a scoping issue because when we were busy with the process, it was recognized that the extent of the investigation and the amount of work that had to be done was quite sufficient. So hence the adjustment that needed us to move into the 90-10 space.
Was quite sufficient. What does that mean? The scope of the work was quite sufficient.
Yeah, so I mean the investigators were required to do things like imaging, going into people's accounts. So even in the analysis that supply chain had then suggested to us, they then mentioned that, look, it would not possibly work with the 80-20. We needed to move it into a 90-10 space so that you allow them to expand.
In the initial planning, that was not taken into consideration.
No, obviously, I mean, it was, but it was obviously also based on suggestions and support that we got from supply chain that made us change the scope.
And do we have the forensic report?
No, Chairperson, we do not have a forensic report. I mean, there is an indication on the last slide. There was a bullet that the DG was making reference to that talks about the challenges we had with this specific service provider, to the extent that initially the decision from the audit committee was that that contractual obligation had to be terminated.
What are challenges? I mean, you're using this word challenges a lot, and it does not tell us anything.
Yeah, so if I were to break it down, basically there were issues of performance, Chairperson. So the service provider in
Who is the service provider?
This was Deloitte. Deloitte Forensic was the service provider. Yeah, so the chairperson of the audit committee wants to be the one to respond. So let me give her that opportunity.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Deloitte was appointed as a service provider, and during the process, there was issues with their ethical conduct, which we identified around the 2nd of March 2017.
What is ethical conduct? Please,
there was
don't make
correspondence.
Pregnant statements. Break them down so that we know we can have details.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah. On the 2nd of March, one of the senior officials from Deloitte wrote an email to the DDG Corporate Services requesting some assurance in terms of future work. And basically the email was saying that given the work that they are currently executing, can Treasury give them guarantees or assurance that that will not hamper their future engagement in the project? As the committee, when I got that correspondence, we engaged on it, and we then took a view that they have breached their objectivity, and therefore reliance on their work cannot be trusted. That was the primary reason why, as the committee, we took a decision to terminate Deloitte appointment. Subsequent to that process, we obviously had to engage in a settlement with them. And upon executing that process, we had to consider their final draft report, which was submitted to us on the 20th of March. And as at that time, I must indicate, Chair, that it was a time already after the correspondence that breached their objectivity. So in considering the report, the main objective was mainly to determine how much of the work that they have done they ought to be paid for. And in doing that, the committee, in assessing the work based on the scope, it was found that the work that they did and the report that was submitted was rendered inadmissible. And as a result, there is no report, and that's the reason why we have said to the committee that there is no report from the Deloitte's investigation.
No, thanks. You are saying you discovered that the report was inadmissible, but there was a settlement, and you paid them, that is some money, or they were not paid anything.
Can I clarify? Obviously, when you terminate a contract, you take into consideration the fact that work was undertaken. And we knew at the time that one of the offerings on the table from their side is for them to be compensated for the work that they have already done. So that's the process that we looked at. So given the conclusion of the assessment of the committee, we then concluded that they are not actually eligible for any payment. So no payment was actually effected to them. Thanks.
No, Chair, if that is the case, then thanks.
So was there a response from the DDG who had been sent the correspondence from Deloitte?
Chair, I must actually compliment the DDG for the high moral ground that he displayed. Upon receiving that correspondence, he basically forwarded that to the respective stakeholders, one being internal audit, and the other one being the project team itself.
Okay.
And that's how I got to know about the correspondence.
Thanks very much. Comrade Chula?
Chairperson, thank you very much for the opportunity. Not that I have many questions. I think I just have to have a follow-up on the catastrophic risk findings which were made. In slide 30, there were about 49 of them, of which 5 of them were regarded as very high risk rating. I just wanted to find out from the DG in terms of moving from the IMFS 1 into the IMFS 2, in terms of these 5 high risking rating. How are you going to deal with these issues which were raised in terms of these findings? Because for me, Chairperson, I think they are very much important moving forward in terms of wanting to implement this project. You've got to take them into cognizance. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, DG.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I must mention that these are for IFMS 2 related findings. And in particular, they were for that payment review period that is under review. So we are mentioning and noting that management has taken note of these. And if you look at slide 39, there's a bullet 3. Management had, in their revised comments, accepted majority of the internal audit findings. And at the time, we had already begun implementing all of the IA internal audit recommendations as reported. And demonstration of such actions are from slide 30 onwards, right through to slide 36. in terms of all of the findings. We have taken corrective actions where necessary, in terms of whether it's process, whether it's worksheets that, timesheets that were not signed, or payment process, or no approvals, invoices, not all of those findings. We, we have taken action, and we are demonstrating what exactly happened under each of those slides and the categories as identified.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to follow up as well on the project that has not really been successful, to say, just to check with you, DG, as the accounting officer, if there's any disciplinary measures that has been taken against any officials, any disciplinary measures, and if you have, who's that particular person?
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. We have not taken any disciplinary measures as yet. I'm bracketing as yet, because two processes, as I indicated earlier, are unfolding. One, and I gave the reasons earlier on of the time and the period, and wanting to satisfy myself that the action that I'll be taking will be an appropriate one. There is an internal process over and above what the internal audit committee picked up. I had to satisfy myself and appointed two senior DDGs who will have interviewed each and every one who, one way or the other, would have been related. That's one process. And secondly, the one was awaiting, and it's unfortunate that the process now for the forensic audit is going to be a while before we get the results. But with the actions and the report, draft report that I got from the two-person DDG team, one is comfortable and ready to can act. That's why I think my last bullet that I included this morning, to say, then I've got full authority and a fuller picture of what kind of reorganization, what kind of reorganization will I do or will I make on the IFMS project itself. That involves a wide ranging of issues, including what I said earlier when I was responding to Honorable Boy, that we, for instance, there is a process now, because I said there are challenges even now as we implement IFMS, and that essentially just made me stop the payment. There's pointers that then justify the actions that we have to take on key individuals, on that will help us rectify the processes, that will help us, and as I said, indicate, reorganize the project management office. So there is evidence now that will give me the authority to act in a way that I think will be appropriate, in line with recognizing that this program has got challenges, recognizing also that even the Auditor General, in terms of draft audit findings, has identified some of the challenges that really give me justification for me to can act.
All right. Okay.
Thank you for that response, DG. But maybe just want to add that maybe the DG will keep us informed in terms of that process. Chairperson, I think my last follow-up question will be to SETA. Chair, I just need to be assisted. Maybe I don't understand it correctly. Chair, I just want to get the role of SETA in terms of project management with this whole project, or in terms of your oversight. To me, sir, Chairperson, sitting here, I feel like SETA didn't do a proper oversight. So I just need to be convinced some more so that I understand what was your role. Because I think when I do the calculations, I think SETA spent almost like 280 million on IFMS 1, and which the whole project really, since it has been stopped, for me it doesn't seem like there was value for money. So convince me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think the role of SITA is shown on slide 18 of the National Treasury presentation, particularly the blue blocks.
I have seen it. Just,
Okay.
just explain it to me.
Yes, yes.
What is it?
So there were parts of it where SITA was doing the software development work, and then there were two parts there, which one is the financial management, and the other one is the one that is called ADE, where SITA contracted external parties to do the work. And I think what my colleague has just mentioned is that some of those modules there are working at National Treasury and DPSA, and some of them were never completed. The SITA could have done better. We could have done better and provided better leadership during that period. That's all I can say. Right now, the overall project management is with National Treasury, and we are doing what has been designated for us, which is the hosting. Thank you.
Okay. Comrade.
Chairperson, I understand SITA could have done better. What is the purpose of SITA if SITA could have done better? It means SITA doesn't do their work. It's not fair enough to say that SITA could have done better. Then it means even next year, even on this IMFS 2, you're still gonna say SITA could have done better. It's not convincing. What is it that you do? What is it that you are being paid for? Chair, maybe they might not respond.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe they might not respond.
I hear you. No, it's fine, CEO. I think she's merely expressing a disappointment. You see, because to merely say SITA could have done better does not give us comfort. You know, doesn't give us comfort. Doesn't change anything. Did I see your hand up, Comrade Kuno? Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I must say that I am disappointed on the way we got this presentation, or the way it was presented to us, and the way everybody has been answering. National Treasury is the key component, or should I say the key department in governance, and I don't think they're being exemplary. I'll start with the Chief Procurement Officer. He came and appeared to Scopa twice, if not more. And he really convinced us that he is doing a good job. And that's why most of the time when departments come and appear before Scopa, we will then ask them about what he advised us on. But the same Chief Procurement Officer failed to discuss, to help or advise his own department. What was his role? What is the role of the Chief Procurement Officer in the procurement of IFMS? What was their input in terms of helping with the process? They could have seen that we're going to have problems going further, but they didn't. And yet they are advising other departments. And I understand from the last time that it's not only national, but they're even going provincially. So if they can make such a big mistake with a billion rand, which might sound, you know, like peanuts to you because you're dealing with billions and you think that a billion rand is not a lot of money. How does that happen, Chairperson? Thanks.
Chief Officer, the Chief Procurement Officer, were they involved in the IMFS processes?
Chair, in terms of the process, they would not have been involved in procuring services because it is the treasury that will procure, and its own internal supply chain processes that will have rendered, will have procured all the services.
I think what she wants to find out is, was there any role they played, any advisory, any monitoring role? Since they monitor everybody.
Chair, not to the best of my knowledge, no. But what I also did as part of the investigation that satisfies me, I have requested that they should go into each and every payment of the payments that were made to check. One was to check the procurement of, the process that National Treasury undertook to secure all your BITS technologies, Apex, everyone. They are doing that work for me. Secondly, I've asked them now to check from where they sit, where this payment legitimate or not. Just as a layer that will satisfy me once all of these processes are unfolding, so that I also, from where they sit, satisfy myself that Chief Procurement Office is helping me out. So I'm awaiting that work from them.
Chairperson, the Chief Procurement Officer has got standards and procedures on how they deal with different projects. The example that, I forgot his name, Kenny Brown. He made an example of a service provider and a government doing the same thing. For instance, if a service provider wants to build a building, they can be charged 2 million rands. But when it comes to government, for the same things, same space, they will charge almost 2 billion rands. He was making that example. And he said he went to an extent of going to find out why are they doing that to government. And they said government takes long to pay. That's why they charge so much. So if the Chief Procurement Officer was involved from the beginning, because they even go, as the overseer, they check even before there's a big project in this magnitude. Before it happens, then they will be able to advise you that these people are overcharging and these ones are not overcharging. So that on slide 31, the problems that are there, excessive expenditures of 145 million for 5-year period, what you have spent there, it's a lot of money. So if the Chief Procurement Officer was involved, the one who sits in National Treasury as part of his office, if he cannot help within the National Treasury, how then can we say that that they will be able to help other departments and provinces as well? If they cannot do, the charity begins at home. Why were they not